And we're live. What's going on, Steve?
Well, great to be back, Tony. I think my fourth appearance, something like that. But
At least that.
yeah, I got to say it's cool to I don't know to rub shoulders with Tony DeFeo. When in the '80s, I would read High Performance Cars and Cliff Gromer, you guys, all that kind of stuff. CSK Public and I'd, be drag racing quite often on streets of Palmer, Massachusetts. Dangerous stuff done safely. But I'd always have the latest copy of High Performance Cars,
Illustrated.
cars. And I would be in the car with me, and so it's cool to 40 years later.
Yeah, exactly. Here we are, 40 years later.
Jeez.
And you're more popular on my channel than I am on my own.
Okay.
People are always, where's Steve? I want get more Steve on here. But you're a busy guy. You don't. If people don't realize you're always at it, and you're always traveling, and you're doing the auction,
Yeah, just as Bear Jackson last week, Florida. I got to say this: I'm in Massachusetts, and it's we're just crawling out of winter right now, and I'm okay with the season. I spent 17 years in Los Angeles, and some would say, "What did you leave that for?" It was overcrowded. I did my part to make it better. I left. You know what I mean? But with that said, it was always kind of warm. But I don't mind winter. I get down to Florida, and it was 90 degrees and muggy, and I wanted to go back. Florida's beautiful. I'm not kidding. But if you immerse yourself too quickly from 40 degrees at noon to 90 degrees and sweating, I was like, oh, I couldn't believe it. But it was a great show. It was good to be down in Florida. We were there for about a week, but it was cool. Just got back, again, a week ago, right now, I think. I was flying home from that.
Yeah, Florida, everything off the Gulf is just a different kind of hot. Like we get some humidity here, but it's nothing like the saltwater humidity you get on the coast. And that's like where you are, Massachusetts, because you're right off the Atlantic there.
Yeah.
So you get that salt water cold.
Yeah.
Right, which is bone chilling. Here in Tennessee, you don't get down into the 20s and the 30s, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not the same weather that you get. And then the hot, we get up to 100, but 100 here is like 80 in Florida.
Yeah, the humidity is probably moderate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me say hi to all of our regulars and whoever our newcomers are. I see Fubar there. Fubar the Axe, the world's greatest moderator, one of the world's greatest moderators. We have 4 of them. Guys, Mr. Will, Jupiter Mustang Mike, Dakota, what's happened? How come Dakota hasn't been timed out yet? Everybody who celebrated Easter today, happy Easter to all. The Passover, if you celebrate Passover, happy Passover. And look, we've got Steve, big Steve. And bro, your channel is blowing up.
Yeah, it's doing well. A year ago right now, I kind of didn't. I knew what YouTube was. I'd watch it and stuff. But the thing of it is, sometimes when you're a freelancer or self-employed person, you have to be aware that sometimes the phone doesn't ring or whatever it might be. And for a long time, I was pitching the idea of a Junkyard show to various networks, and it took 5 years before David Freiberger gave it a shot on Motor Trend channel. And that was when the Motor Trend was still kind of half internet, there's a paywall and that kind of stuff. And it was fairly successful. We did 3 seasons. And then, I don't know, there was a change of administration. Who knows? I don't know, something. But it was gone. It's over. It's done. I'm thinking, well, what do I do now? So this channel is a wonderful thing. And it's nice that people tune in.
And who talked you into doing this channel?
Well, Tony, you had a lot to do with it, And that's right. But it is wonderful that we can, and I tell people, I say to them, if you have a compelling story or something you love to do, shoeing a horse, combing your cat, people make videos of everything, and there's a video called Cena Drums, this gal in Germany or something like that, and she plays drums, and you can tune in and you can do anything.
That young girl, she's like 14 or so, 15. Yeah, I saw that. I was scrolling through the other day, just killing a few minutes, and I saw it. I'm like, my God.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you're passionate about anything, you can make it your show, and and in the meantime, just enjoy it and have fun and tell your story, and so it's good. Yeah.
We wanted to talk about oddball and special junkyard finds.
Yeah.
And I haven't had nearly. I found a couple, but nothing like what you come across. You're the god of junkyard crawling.
Well, I will say there was a picture, and I think it was High Performance Cars, of Tony standing in an engine pile. It was a story about putting Chevy rods into your 400 to get a 470 cube motor. But it was about, and also it was also in search of cubes. It wasn't just Mopars. It was 2 stories. Where you're standing there on a pile of engines with a sheet over your head, like the savior, standing there. That was great.
That wasn't me.
Are you sure?
Positive. That was my buddy Paul Antonis, who pops in here every once in a while. we were like this back then.
Yeah.
Well, we were like this pretty often, but we were also like this.
Okay.
And I was shooting a pickup. We were looking for a lead shot for the story for the magazine, and that was a junkyard car. That was a pile at oh God, I'm trying to remember. Francesco Brothers Auto Wrecking on Staten Island.
Okay.
And the younger guys missed out on this. If you're in your 30s or 40s, you missed this whole thing. Back in the day, the junkyards used to pull in motors and make piles out of them, and these piles became literal mountains, like 40 feet high and like just totally expansive. And I used to go to these piles and I would buy all of the big block Mopars I could find for $20 a piece.
Wow.
And we'd go up there with like broken torsion bars and stuff like that and wrench them out and then push them down the side, and then we'd make a pile of them. And you'd leave with 5 motors for like $100.
Wow.
So that was the pile at Francesco Brothers Auto Wrecking. And I needed a lead shot for that story, and we were there at the yard. I had my camera, and Paul looked just like me. We both have long hair. We were both scruffy-looking Italians. Well, he was Greek, and he got up on a pile, and people always thought that was me, but it wasn't me. It's actually Paul.
There was a thing over your head, and there was some glasses, and now I know. Now it can be told. Now it can be told. Well, I want my money back, Gavin. No, but that was a great.
That was a story about stroking big block Mopars before stroker big block Mopars were a thing.
That's right. And I remember too, it was the low deck, the 400, the unwanted 400, and then using a big block Chevy rod, and you could get those used at the swap meet. And that was the days when used connecting rods were kind of even considered in a high performance engine, because we had nothing from 440 Source or Crowder or Carrillo. We had Crowder and Carrillo, but you wanted to pay $1,000 a set. But
none of that stuff existed. None of that stuff existed.
Right. Yeah. So it's amazing, to
we've come a long way.
Yeah.
People take for granted how hard it was to be a Mopar guy back, and you remember.
Porting iron heads with those templates. Remember those templates? You had to cut up a sheet of plastic and had these line drawings on it. Trim them out. And I always say to trim the inside or the outside of the black ink. There's this little tiny, it's like a state of whatever, Texas, and you trim that thing out, set it down inside of the port of the cylinder head. And then you keep grinding until you make the contour match this piece of plastic, and keep turning it every 20 degrees, whatever it is. And, I was trying to do it with an electric drill. And it didn't work, but that was what we had. Now we have 440 Source for like $1,100, a set of aluminum heads with hardened seats and ideal ports that are pretty damn good for $1,100 delivered even. So yeah.
The first time I used those templates, I was probably 17.
Okay.
And they were still like new. This was like the thing, right? Yeah. And I didn't have a die grinder. When do you even get a die grinder? Yes, the other thing too, people take it for granted. Like these days, you go to Harbor Freight, you go to place, you go get a die grinder.
Yeah, carbide burr.
A carbide burr. We never even heard of these things. So I used a Dremel. I had a Dremel, and I had those stones, and it took me like a month to do a set of cylinder heads, because you just wear out the stones, and I have to save up money and go buy more stones at the hobby shop. And you're 17 years old, and you get the sickness. This is what you do.
That's right. Yeah. And more often than not, they used to say, don't touch the short turn radius. That was Tom Hoover's, legendary, the area. Don't mess with it. I mean, if you do, you're going to probably mess things up. The short side radius was the thing. But the funny thing is, it was a clear sheet of plastic, and it was bigger than the screen here. But you had to trim those shapes out, because there was, I think, 5 per hole, because, the shape of the shape. And I was always like, well, is it, when I trim it with my scissors, is it the inside or the outside of the black line that defines the shape? And there's a difference. So I think that was part of the problem, too. I remember that you had to get the little tang so it fit inside of the valve guide. That was tight.
If you were lazy, you trimmed to the inside.
You're right.
And if you felt ambitious, you trimmed to the outside.
Yeah, but then the shape that you get from that thing is going to be, bigger or smaller. I don't know. It's crazy. We've come a ways, But the junkyard thing, I was born in New York City in 1964, not 1864, 1964. There's a difference there. But we left when I was like a year old, 2 years old, to Sturbridge, Mass, and then to North Brookfield, blah blah blah. But I remember as a kid, just seeing UPS trucks and taxis, and apparently it's a fact, yes, that taxi cabs have to be retired after so many miles, yes, and there's a whole couple generations of checker cabs that there's like one surviving example of these old checker cabs and the Skyview DeSotos of the 30s and 40s with the sliding roof on the back, and apparently none are available or existing because they went into the junkyard. So you probably walked through, of course, before your time. But
Before my time.
were taxi cabs like piled high because they had to be timed out, or is that a myth?
I think the Taxi and Limousine Commission,
Okay.
which I always had problems with, because I did the gypsy cab thing for a while too when I was a teenager. That was one of the ways I would fix cars during the day, and I would drive cabs all night.
Yeah.
And that was how I paid for a lot of the stuff that I was doing.
Yeah.
So I always had problems with the Taxi and Limousine Commission because I would run gypsy cabs. I would use a stolen plate. I'd go buy a car out of the Staten Island Avenue for like $150.
Right.
Put a stolen plate on it.
Now,
Draw out some stickers for the windshield, because who the hell could get it registered or inspected? So I draw out stickers, stick them on the windshield, go run the cab.
wow.
And but the Taxi and Limousine Commission did have something about the New York Taxi and Limousine Commission did have something about retiring cars after a certain point, but I believe that was done away with by the 70s.
Okay.
So it's possible the earlier cars that you're talking about would have fallen into that.
Yeah, because I know the checkers, the Marathon, but before that there were like the A4, weird looking things. Now checker, as we know, is kind of like this. It's like the 10th Beetle. We're not talking the 4th or the 5th. We're talking the 10th Beetle.
Right.
I don't realize what a checker even is. And it was, they didn't make their own engines or trannies and stuff, but they did stuff in Kalamazoo, Michigan that was like, weird stuff, and they were weird looking cars. But they were designed to be taxis more often than not. But apparently the early stuff, there's none left, because they had to be timed out and they had no value, less than no value. And I think it was the A4, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was before the Marathon, like 2 generations before, weird looking thing. And there's only one left. It was sent to California. It was a Hollywood prop in movies in the 30s and 40s. And because it was out there, it's the one left. And there's one in Sweden. But it's just so weird that these things were common as cockroaches, and they went to the junkyard and they're gone. So many things are like that.
They were all over the place in New York. The marathons, they built. So people who don't know what a checker marathon looks like, it looks kind of like a fat 55 Chevy.
Yeah.
More or less, right? Give or take. It's got that same kind of line. They built those cars unchanged body wise from 1956 until 1976, I think it was.
Yeah, they made them
20-year run where they didn't change anything on them except the drivetrain.
Yeah.
The earliest ones had there weren't even General Motors engines. The earliest ones had oh geez, I don't remember.
Yeah, Hercules, or there was like generic
Like an industrial motor.
Yeah.
Right, and then the later ones all had small block Chevys. The ones built from like 64 or 65 on had small blocks.
Yeah.
They were great cars though.
Yeah. And they made a lot of folks, if you see a really long, weird, like the airport limousines that were even done in station wagon form, like, probably 160-inch wheelbase on something crazy. And those were kind of the ones that people remember. But it's funny, at Barrett Jackson a week or two ago, there was a checker, I think it was an 86, one of the very last. It had a Chevy 229 V6 in it. And weird, it was a turbo 200 transmission, something like that. But a V6, sort of a modern engine, not really, but at the time it was sort of this cutting edge new thing, the 229. Or sorry, yeah, it wasn't 229. It was actually. No, sorry, it was a 4.3. But anyway, whatever. But in this ancient 50s cab, but yeah, checker, they kind of made do, and they'd have GM steering columns and just weird stuff.
It was like AMC. It was a grab bag.
Right.
Something from this manufacturer, something from that manufacturer. But the body, I said 76, but it was like 86 was the last year. So for 30 years, they built this car and they didn't change any of the body ones. And I'm surprised Hot Rod has never picked up on those.
Yeah, well, they're heavy. I know certainly that there's nothing uglier than a checker, but there's nothing more beautiful than one. It depends on how crazy you are. So hot rodders, I'm sure there's been some novelty cars, but they are heavy, as you know. They have heavy frames, thick floors, flat floors, because the taxi commission said no. The whole reason why Hearst was modifying B-body floors to get away from that tranny tunnel. I guess that was the whole thing, right?
2 inches lower.
Yeah, or maybe Fort Wells, but it's interesting that well, anyway, that sometimes things go to the junkyard and that's the last the world sees of them, and checkers are kind of one of them. especially the older ones. But
So what's the rarest thing you ever found in the yard?
well, I got to say there was a thing called the Osco Lambert disc brake. Chrysler used those things in 1949 through 54, and a lot of guys. Well, the Corvette was the first American car with disc brakes. Well, that's not so fast on that one. Again, the Osco Lambert disc brakes were something that was used in full size cars, the town and country limousines, that kind of stuff. And I found two vehicles with them over the years, and they always kind of blew my mind because they're special things. And there they were in a junkyard. One was in Charlton, Massachusetts. The other one was in out in California. But it was an amazing thing. I'm trying to find. Anyway, there's pictures of the stuff. I'll find it here. I got a book here that I wrote years ago. This is called Rusted Muscle, and it's out of print and stuff like that. But basically, when I moved to California, I realized that people out there did not appreciate or understand older cars, and they were going to the junkyard and being crushed in numbers that I couldn't believe it. So when I was at Hot Rod Magazine, the Chrysler car, Roland Osborne wouldn't let me do it. He says, "Nah, no junk cars in my magazine." It was all, okay, whatever. But at Hot Rod, we do these things called the junkyard crawl, and people really like that. And so I try to say to people, hey, quit your job, go to California and save an old vehicle of any kind because they're being crushed. And one thing about California is that there's not much land mass. Here we go. Here it is. Okay, this thing right here, that is a 1949 or 50 airport limousine, right?
Okay.
It's an airport limousine. But look at that brake assembly thing right there. That is an Oscar Lambert. Now, here's the thing. It's a disc brake. That thing in the middle is actually a rotor that spins. It's stationary. The aluminum structure right and left pinches it, and there's balls and ramps that create friction so it's a disc brake inside of a drum. In fact, there's a thing called the Kinmont brake. Hot rodders dream about Kinmont brakes in the 1940s.
Oh, I never heard of this.
Yeah, Kinmonts. They're weird. If you look at the Beach Boys, what the heck's it? Little Deuce Coupe album. Okay, near that blue thing. If you look at the wheel on the front, aluminum structure. That's not a Buick drum. That's a Kinmont safety brake. So for what it's worth, the Beach Boys were way ahead of the curve with that song. Although it didn't have it was a Cadillac powered car, not a flathead, but whatever. Anyway, but anyway, so Chrysler had Osco Lambert, which was a spin on the Kinmont brake, and they both kind of happened around the same time, but they were similar but not the same. But a disc inside of an encasement. So I found two situations with those. The other one was in Idaho. It was an L&L Auto Salvage, and that was on a 1951 Chrysler Airport limousine with a 331 two-barrel, 3-speed manual, and it was a former airport limousine, long wheelbase, but it had the safety brakes all the way around. So that was crazy weird.
So so from walking up to it, it looks like a drum.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
What's the giveaway? Like, so if somebody's walking through a yard and they find a car that may have something like this, what's the vehicle giveaway?
Yeah, big bolt circle. A really big bolt circle is kind of the key thing. And it's kind of hard to see. I don't know. I'm not sure if this is showing up, but on this, you'll see a red circle. It's kind of hard to see. Yeah. But no. Okay. If you look at that, see the drum has those kind of weird aluminum. It looks aluminum. Some are iron, some are aluminum. Most of them are iron.
Okay.
This is a shot of one. It's gray iron right here. It's not aluminum. It's shiny. But when you see that, see the big hub, that big crazy looking hub right there?
Yeah.
You'll see that. It's a big thing. It's different from it's ball bearings and stuff inside of there. It's not tapered yet. But with that said, the dust cap is a big thing, and it screws on.
That.
It screws on.
Is that a 6 lug?
It's 5. It's 5, but
It is 5. Okay.
It's a 5 on, I think, 5.5 or something. It's basically like a Ford truck kind of same bolt pattern as on a big Chrysler at the time.
The Imperial.
It's big Imperial stuff.
Yeah.
So to find that was insane. And it's funny too. I like to shut down the Corvette guys when they say, "Well, Corvette was first, but four-wheel disc brakes." Not so fast. Chrysler had 49, and they were discs. It was a disc that was pinched on each side. And the idea was that in the town and country, which is that sort of weird wood-bodied custom car, it's like the Ford Sportsman. Same version of the Chrysler version of thing. Well, there's such big cars, let alone the airport limousines, that the 12-inch drums of the day were dangerous. You get 12 people in the back of an airport limousine, you're coming down a hill. So one of the ideas was, to have some kind of a brake. And there was a company called Osco Lambert that did industrial brakes and airplane brakes in the 30s even. And so they had this thing, the safety brake. Chrysler used it under license, but there were tens of thousands of vehicles made with them. But you want to look for like a town and country from 49 through 50, 4, and yes, some Hemi cars got them, kind of crazy. Front and back, by the way. Rears too. Weird. Yeah, big, weird looking thing. But anyway, so that was a strange thing to find. And thank goodness on the second time I found one, we were doing TV. So I love that, whenever I can. When you know how it is, when you find something, forever you're telling your buddies about it. You're telling your buddies and you're trying to give them the mental picture. But if you have a TV camera there, you can show the world this weird thing. And the guy running the camera is like, Steve, why are we doing this? Don't worry about it. Just shut up and shoot. Because, it's not his thing. He does baseball games or whatever the hell, So it was wonderful to give cars a voice, give stuff a voice that hides in plain sight, and like a Fordson tractor. I got a video coming up on one of those things. Now, the trouble with those is like most early tractors up till 39, when the Ferguson formula was imported from England. I get that in a second. What would happen is a guy in the field farming, he's pulling a rake or what do they call it? The thing that digs up the ground, right? Hits a comes to a sudden stop. The tractor keeps going, does a wheelie. The farmer goes off, gets crushed. That was a thing. And that was with the low pintle hook, on a trailer or an implement behind it. And so what they did is this guy, Harry Ferguson, a British guy, came up with a deal for a 3-point hitch, which distributed the load higher and had hydraulics so that the tractor wouldn't go over. It would just come to a stop. It would no longer have the leverage to go over. So Henry Ford in 1939, I think it was a 4N tractor, whatever it was, the replacement for the Ford Sun, which was in production for a long time. But the 4N, I think it was, I got a book here that should tell us. Yeah. This kind of a tractor right here. When you see one of those things, it'll have a little thing on the front says, hang on, right about right there. It'll say Ferguson Formula. And that was Henry Ford's acknowledgement and payment to Harry Ferguson that it had the Ferguson type 3-point pintle on the back, right? And farmers stopped dying. But anyway, so that's the crazy thing. So I found one of each of those things and put them in the video, and people like it, and point out what the hell is a Ferguson formula. And later on, Ferguson formula, the Jensen Interceptor FF all-wheel drive. Okay. Harry Ferguson still doing stuff, and he was one of the pioneers of all-wheel drive in Europe. So Ferguson formula, Harry Ferguson, and everything has a story if you dig in. And junkyards are where you find them, But but no pun intended with the digging in on the tractor, because the dead farmer, never mind.
Well, see, that's what I love about you, man. You've got like people say, "Oh, I have." Tony has a big range. I have nothing. I have nothing compared to that.
Well, I'll say this, every time I call it becoming an instant expert, right? Like at Barrett Jackson and stuff like that. We have 4 minutes to get it right or really screw up on live TV about the 1949 Corvette. You know what I'm saying? Getting stubbed, like 63 Roadrunner, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Or Boss, 421, that kind of crap. It doesn't mean anything to the production people. They won't say, stop, Steve, stop. What did you just say? They don't know. It's up to you to quality self-control. You got your quality control is between your ears, so you got to watch your ass. I've been doing it for 18 years. So I prepare. I have little notes and stuff like that. I make sure that I'm not going to say something stupid on air.
And you're doing these things live.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're live. 8 seconds. In case they say the F word, Ford or Ferrari, then they can get you. You know what I mean? But there's 8 seconds to pull the plug if somebody, whatever. But it's live. Otherwise, yeah. So
what's the biggest mistake you've made on one of these live?
Yeah, I've said this before. Well, I'm kind of a Mopar guy at the core. I love them all, except for French cars. There's no way I'll ever have another Le Car. Joking, or PU Joe. But anyway, no, French cars are cool. But I had a Le Car in high school. I'm still scarred because of it. Because my buddies had cool cars. My car had 3 lug nuts.
3 lug nuts.
Yeah, but the seats folded flat, so that was a positive on Friday nights. But anyway, but Chevys, right? So the SS 396 arrives in 1966. 7, 8, 9, 70, 71, 72, what's 42,
42,
yeah. But anyway, with that said, the 138 VIN prefix is there from 1964 V8 car, but in 66, 7, and 8, 138 is a guaranteed big block Chevelle. Or a concourse station wagon, by the way, but nobody's going to confuse those things. 69, the 138 goes away, becomes an option package on any V8 Malibu 2-door. So you get a 136. Well, I'm on the block saying this is a 69 SS 396, but I'm seeing a 136 on this one. It's got to be a clone. Well, they're saying it's real. Nah, there's a clone. It isn't 138. Well, what did I know? The change from 138 to 136 in 68, 69, bit me in the ass. So that's something I'll never do again. In fact, the emails are still coming in over that blooper.
Oh,
7 years
wow.
ago, 12 years ago. But anyway, so yeah, you're just gonna don't step in it. Don't step in it. But it's like an attorney going to a courtroom. As much as we all love lawyers, no, but I'm kidding. I love lawyers. But anyway, you have to prepare. Go into the courtroom, but once you leave, you can forget that stuff because you're done. But next time you go into the room, just make sure prepare. Because the cars deserve more than a guess. I say that too because it's true that I show up on set and 80% of the people in that building don't really have a clue what I'm saying. So there's nobody going to stop me and say, "Hey, Steve, you just screwed up." That happens after the damage is done. So try not to be that guy, but like that. But so anyway, the same thing plays out in junkyards. And one of the frustrations is the stuff that you and me and your viewers are digging on is try to tell that to a TV executive, a decision maker who doesn't know what a car is, but he runs a thing like Trend Motor backwards. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like, and they don't understand why it's cool to find a Boss 302 Mustang in a junkyard or even a Mustang in a junkyard. It's an uphill thing. So thank God for YouTube.
I found this is back around 1980. Well, wait, not 81. 86, 87. I was at a place in New Jersey called the Pierogi Brothers.
Oh yeah, the Mustang Ford people. Yeah.
The Mustang. So it wasn't quite a junkyard, but they had a pile of older, like discarded cars,
Yeah.
and on the pile was a Boss 429.
Wow. Did they know this? Did you point it out to them?
They knew it, and they were cloning a car
Yeah.
off of that shell, but it was a legit Boss 429 Mustang. It was just gone.
Yeah. Back in the day, one of my first junkyard discoveries was a 66 or 7, couldn't tell, Hemi Charger. It was a guy named Chuck Pierce up in New Hampshire. I might have related this here before. I'll do it quick. But back in 1987, 88, a friend of mine, Fred Lee in Belchertown, Mass., big Hemi guy, good dude. He had a 68 Hemi Roadrunner shell that he was restoring. And I was thinking, I could maybe buy that from you. Okay. So I worked with him all winter long. Didn't end up buying the car, but we went to a junkyard in New Hampshire, Chuck Pierce. And we're walking through there. Chuck Pierce, big Mopar guy. He might be around. I don't know. But this is back in 87, 88. And there's a Dodge Charger sitting there. The whole front's torched off, just the firewall. The rear quarter panels, one of them sliced off. It's not even there anymore, right to the transmission tunnel, the drive shaft tunnel. It's just gone. But I walk over and I see, wait a minute, there's an H pipe coming out of the front of this thing. And on the passenger, there's a nipple, a little metal nipple for the heat riser, for the string Hemi. But it's torched off, just a little remnant. The H was still there, but it was sliced off. The upturns to the manifolds were gone, but you could see it. It was 2.5-inch stop, too. I went around the back. There was a torque box on the remaining corner of the car in the dirt. And this shell, I said, hey, that's a Hemi Charger. And the guy was like, huh? And so a week later, Chuck Pierce dragged that thing. He said, I've been walking by that for a couple of years, but it was largely because of the high performance Mopar articles where you guys were talking about the Hemi telltales on torque boxes and stuff, you and Cliff and those guys. So it's a circle. But with that, I found a Hemi Charger in a junkyard, and that kind of opened my eyes to it. It might just be junk. And Chuck said, I've been walking by that thing for 5 years.
Didn't know what it was.
He snagged it the next week. Now it's restored or not, I don't know. It was sliced in half, but it had a torque box and an H pipe. That's a Hemi car.
I did in high performance Mopar. I did the first Hemi car spotters guide.
Yeah, the MN number. Yeah, I remember. I did it in the other room. I still have it. Yep.
And I used. These guys would know if you ever watch Graveyard Cars. There's the guy Tony D'Agostino. Yeah. That's his expert. Tony and I know each other from the time we were teenagers. Yeah. And I shot that article over at his place on an original Hemi car he had sitting there.
Yeah. Okay.
That was in 1985 or 1986. We did that.
Pioneering work. I mean, that's what they call pioneering work because Hemi cars. Nobody knew what a torque box was. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
Here's the funny thing: torque boxes. It's basically a piece out of the convertible body, the parts bin. You know what I mean? And also there's leaf spring reinforcements. That's the torque box ain't all of it. And there's different ways. There's spot weld. There's little. They're not bead welded in place. Clone builders. You know what I mean? But with that said, I did find something. Well, you'll see torque boxes occasionally, not always on like 340 Dusters and stuff.
Not the torque boxes.
Yeah,
but they didn't have the rear leaf spring reinforcement.
Yeah,
the rear leaf spring reinforcement was put there for the NASCAR cars.
Okay.
Because in 66, 67, they were building those cars off of the regular unibody. They would just add the roll cage and everything. Yeah. So for the torque boxes at the front are actually for drag racing. because the leaf spring pushes against that section and it distributes
Okay.
the load out to
Distorting
the
it.
rockers.
Yeah.
But for the NASCAR cars, because of the cornering, they needed something to keep the leaf springs from like pushing over. So at the very back, a lot of people don't know this. I've come across people who are Hemi people, right? Oh, Hemis, I live Hemis, but they never know about that little reinforcement that they stuck at the back of the leaf spring. So,
and the pinion snubber reinforcement up top, that that metal beast that sometimes I've seen them in a flame cut. It's the weirdest. They're not always pretty,
No, those cars were like they were like literally just slammed. Like I guess they took regular unibodies, put them off to the side, and then like on the third shift on a Friday, they had somebody go through it again. Well, this and this and this and this and this, and that's how they built those cars. Very sloppy.
Yeah. Well, the
very,
thing
very
is,
sloppy.
yeah, the Hamtramck, Michigan plant. I mean, Google it. It had its own pimp. Put it like that. You know what I mean? I mean, it was a nasty place, and probably an ugly place to work, to be honest. Who wants to do the same thing over and over? All respect to assembly line workers, especially in the day before robots, But again, the human factor comes in. We all know what the Coke bottles and the help me messages inside the trunk, that kind of thing, But again, the Hemi cars, the street Hemis, were not niche lines, not line built. The Ford SVD Cobras, those go to a little place for niche line build, that kind of thing. But the Hemi stuff was basically they probably said, oh crap, another one of these things. Get out the torch, and it was probably 1 in 800 situation. But there it is. You're going to deal with it now. So.
You'll see the sloppy as well. Like if you look at the torque boxes on a convertible, right? They're always neatly welded in place.
Okay.
But when you look at them on a Hemi car, you can see that like they just pulled this unibody off to the side and said, okay, well, add these pieces. And somebody like at the bottom of the totem pole had to go and stick each of these pieces in place, give them a quick weld, and then move on. And the only difference between a Hemi unibody and a convertible unibody is that the convertible has a piece of angle iron inside the rocker. Like if you cut the rocker apart, there's a piece of angle iron that they stuck in there. Okay. And it's not on the Hemi cars.
Wow. A similar thing is, geek out, here we go. Fox Mustang Convertibles, of course, that every single one of those things was built in two places at the same time. They did the usual stuff at Dearborn. It was built as a coupe. And then the top was sliced off at Dearborn, and then they were trucked over to, I think it was Cars and Concepts, and in Brighton, Michigan. And then from there, with a plastic cap, because year round they're building this Mustang, and there's like 220,000. This happened. It wasn't like 80 times, and they would truck them over to Cars and Concepts, and then they would make it in a convertible. But those coupe bodies came with bigger rockers. If you take your hands and cup around, like you open a door and cup around where the rubber is for the door seal and all that stuff, it's larger on convertibles than it is on any other Mustang. And here's the thing. So there were sedans built with bigger rockers. Did any of those make it into circulation? Probably not. But if you look at those, that's a different thing on the Mustang convertibles. And then, of course, they would complete the installation of the convertible stuff, send it back to Dearborn, go into the rail yard, and get shipped. But a lot of folks don't realize that the Fox Mustang convertible was kind of a handmade thing. And there's a bunch of, I wonder where those roofs go. They were finished out as sedans, trunk cars, not hatchbacks. And then the roofs were sliced off. Where's the pile? 229,000 convertible tops. Where'd they go? It's just the stuff that nobody thinks about when it's happening.
Those unibodies were flimsy, though. I had my Mustang. I raced it for 1 year, and at the end of that year, there's a piece of molding that went over your. Well, okay, I'm backwards now because I'll get the mirror image.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, there's a piece of molding that runs over the door, over the driver's side door, and there's an overlap, right, kind of like alongside. Like if you look up like this, you'll see the overlap part, and the paint was scraped off by about 1/4 of an inch.
From moving.
1/2 inch to 1/4 of an inch from the flexing from that car launching. And so those cars were flimsy as hell. To beef that to make a convertible, those rockers had to be.
Yeah, and in fact, a couple times I've seen those in the junkyard. I haven't had the opportunity yet to show into camera, but in the junkyard you can rip away the caps and stuff, and you see some pretty crude saber saw type work where the B pillows are removed and stuff like that. And it's interesting that a lot of stuff hides in plain sight if you look for it.
Oh, Jody Calhoun, thank you for the super chat, Jody. I appreciate that. And Paul Chaton, didn't have any cars have an extra half leaf on the driver's side? No, the passenger side. The driver's side has the normal, right. They put an extra half leaf on the passenger side.
Yeah, 440 cars had it too.
Right,
440,
right.
you know, but yeah, 5+2, half. And if you can tell, if you look at the passenger side, look under the rear axle tube, you'll see two leaves dead ended right under the axle tube on the
Right,
right hand side. That's going to be an RT, a 440 or a Hemi spring, right on. Yeah,
right.
yeah. Yeah, I always get a kick out of that. How I'm reading the book right now. We Were the Ram Chargers. It's upstairs, but if you ever, it's fantastic. A guy named Dave Rockwell. You know this book, of course, Tony, right?
I've never read it, but I know of it.
It's gold. It's gold.
Is it?
It was written while the guys were still alive. Thornton died, I think, in 17. It was done like in 2009. So thank goodness they were all there to be asked. Hoover's gone now. He's also quoted. They're all quoted. And Hoover, by the way, he said that he was kind of bummed out that the Max Wedge heads, despite 20% larger port volume, didn't do much more than a relatively decent set of just 413 heads, just regular stuff. And that was a revelation to me because everybody tries to find Max Wedge stuff and they go through the hassle of it. And Hoover's saying that there wasn't much difference. And I had one set of Max Wedge heads on an engine that were wasted. They were cut. The seats the valves were sunk, and it ran 13 ones. It wasn't that fast. The 440 went 1290s that was in it before. You know what I mean? So, but anyway, a great book. We Were the Ram Chargers. Grab it. And they get into the Max Wedge cars and everything they did to those things and to bring them in the A990 and the Ultra wheelbase car. Jim Thornton, the driver for the Ram Chargers, was far more than that. He was also who was kind of right-hand man, although they worked for Chrysler or Dodge. And Thornton later went to work for Rupp Snowmobiles in 1969 through 72. And the Rupp muscle sleds, Thornton was the guy behind those things, the 850 doubles. And then he goes to Jeep. And Thornton is the chief engineer at Jeep from 1972 through 86. So if you drive a Grand Wagoneer or CJ, whatever, Thornton is the guy who was the overmaster of that. And Roy Lund, the Quadra-Track, he was the GT40 guy, and he was the guy behind the Quadra-Track, Roy Lund. So Jeep got a lot of cast-offs from the muscle era when it died. So weird shit that comes up,
You talk about the Ram Chargers. I have Forrest Pitcock from the Golden Commandos. Actually lives about 20 miles from here. He's in the same town as Mopar Al.
Still alive and stuff, Forrest?
Still alive, yeah. And evidently his memory, I haven't met him.
Wow.
Yeah, I haven't met him. But evidently his memory is still sharp and he remembers all of this stuff. But I do need to catch up with him while he's still, Mr. Wills Don Big Rush, thank you for the super chat. Muscle Car Review that was my biggest competition because we did Muscle Car magazine, and Muscle Car Review came about. It was Car Review, and then once we started doing Muscle Car magazine, they changed it to Muscle Car Review, and they were our competition. And to be honest with you, they put out a better magazine than we did. We tried like hell.
You guys were great. No, you had better paper, better pictures. I mean, it was Schneider's Muscle Cars, MCR, Schneider Performance Series. No, Muscle Cars was great. MCR was okay. There was a lot of like installing stuff. There was a check and an ad that came with it. It was, it was stuff that was out of what was his name? It wasn't before Peterson came along and bought it. But anyway, yeah.
Well, the thing about Muscle Car Review was that they had staff and they had budget.
Yeah.
And we had neither. So,
you did a lot with a little. You did. Because that was, to me, it was, when I found the CSK stuff, it stood a little taller. There's something about it that was more honest, and to me anyway. Yeah.
Those CSK magazines, all of them, Cars Illustrated, Muscle Car, High Performance Pontiac, Vet, Cars Illustrated, we had 1 week to put each of those magazines through from beginning to end. Like we start with zero. And at the end of the week, you've got the entire package, all of the pictures, all of the stories, all of the captions, the titles, the blurbs, the covers, everything. We had 1 week and 3 guys to do that.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And no budget, no budget. There were a couple of issues of Cars Illustrated where I wrote literally every single, because nobody else wanted to do it. Yeah. They were all busy doing that. And I would do Cars Illustrated in my spare time and put that whole issue out. And Muscle Car Review was like the same. The Muscle Car was the same way. We had 1 week to do it, no budget, just the 3 guys in the office in Hackensack. And Car Review, on the other hand, they were in Florida, and they had a staff and they had a budget, and they were able to do like a higher level of. So I was always a little jealous, like it was like a little bit jealous of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Larry Dobbs. It was Dobbs Publishing. Larry Dobbs, and he sold to Peterson. They had a payday, I suppose, whatever it was. But yeah.
Well, that was way after. I'm going back to 1985, 1986.
The roots of it.
Yeah. The roots of it. Yeah. The roots of it. But they got on the map. Muscle Car Review got on the map with their 50 fastest list.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Like S455 and all that kind of controversy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Road tests. Yes.
They had two things that really, and I tell you the truth, I would say that if you look at the muscle car craze of the 80s that has lasted to today,
yeah,
right? I would say that there were two extremely influential things that got people, that got the buzz, that got the talk and the interest among people for the classic or muscle cars.
Roy Beatty and Ambassador. Go ahead.
Well, they both came from Car Review, Muscle Car Review, and one of them was the 50 fastest list, which had everybody talking and everybody arguing and debating and so on and so forth. Yeah. And then they did that Hemi GTX versus the Buick Grand Sport.
Yeah. Richard Lasseter and Roy Beatty. Those names are burned into the world. Yeah. And the GS was probably prepped. It outran the Hemi. It was a goofy story, but okay. Yeah, to this day, people who run those things go fast with class, that whole thing. And okay, I mean, they're great cars and stuff. A lot of torque. But yes, you're right. Absolutely. It was before the internet when you had to wait for the next month's issue. I remember at CSK, I was a little frustrated. You guys were like every other month, which is, oh man, I had to wait, a little longer, but it was worth waiting. I don't know. Don't underplay. Those were great magazines. I have every one of them. I still have.
Yeah. Everything was, we were on a bi-monthly schedule with each of those magazines. So we did 5 regular titles, and then we did Monster Truck Book, we do a car buyer's guide. I wrote so many freaking things that I don't even remember. How many of those buyer's guides, new cars and, next year's cars and all this. It was constant. We were always, here's another thing you got to get done. Okay, fine. But it paid the bills.
Yeah.
It paid the bills. So Mr. Will is saying, Muscle Car Review did a comparison between a dead original 70 Challenger and a restored one and pointed out countless mistakes like missing emblems, paint runs, etc. New one looked like a ratty car. I didn't see it. I've seen a lot of shoddy restorations.
Well, it is true. There's nothing like an original car. And here's the thing, too. They weren't that nice. They were, paint runs and stuff. But I'd take that any day. I mean, it is true that when people restore cars today, they add love, something they didn't get. I'm not talking Subarus. Right? That's the dumbest thing to me. That's a love. It's what makes a Subaru. What is that? But anyway, with that said, but there is love. There's passion involved. Now when people restore cars, they actually take time. And that's good. You know what I mean? But back in the day, they were pretty raunchy cars. They were banged out. There was like snacks. They were junk food is what they were, meant to be chewed up and fat out.
That's the truth. They were disposable.
Now they're rivaling Ferraris in value, which is fine. It's good. But
SRP is saying that GS had nothing against the Hemi fake news. No, bro. Sorry. You're talking to somebody who drove both of those cars back in the day, right? And I can tell you right now, the average street Hemi was a pretty sour thing. Right? They really didn't have much going for them. The Grand Sport was this bottomless pit of torque. It was just, and if you can get that thing to hook, you had 2 car lengths on any Hemi V-body you can think of, right? Plus, the Grand Sport was lighter. People think of Buicks as being extremely heavy, but they weren't. A Hemi GTX is a good 4,000-pound car by the time you put it on the start line. And the Grand Sport probably had about a 300-pound advantage on it. That Grand Sport, if both of those cars hooked, okay, they're talking about 2 cars in stock condition. If that GS hooked, all right, and it would pull a car on the GTX by the friggin' tree, right, or at least by the 60-foot. The GTX would be playing catch up the whole way down. So no, it's not that the Hemi had nothing against the GS. The Hemi was really not all that. Okay.
I want to defend that a little bit. What I can say is, my first car again was a Renault Lacar, right? My grandma dies, leaves me $10,000. Thanks, Grandma. I mean, that was, in 1986, that was a wonderful car. My dad said, put that in the bank and don't touch it. Oh yeah, sure, Pops. So he didn't know this, but I bought a 68 Hemi Charger, right? Now here's the thing. I went from driving a car to driving a Hemi Charger. I didn't know how to set valves, nothing. I gave that thing no maintenance, nothing. 323s in the back. And it would run 13.8. I mean, 5-liter Mustangs were pretty much no problem. There was a couple cars with nitrous and Hoosiers and stuff. So eventually I put a set of used M&Hs, 391s, drove it to Lebanon bad. Now it had adders on it. But otherwise it had a couple of cars, competition series, 700 carbs, 750s, or 650s. They weren't the original AFBs. And I couldn't use the air cleaner because those stupid Carters have a bigger hole. You couldn't use the air cleaners. It was in trunk. Right. Like these dumb little freaking chrome things. So I ran 13.2 at 101 miles an hour in that thing, leaving it in drive. And then I drove it home. So what I would say this is a lot of magazine guys back in the day, like I have to say, Joe Oldham, rest in peace and stuff like that. But he admitted he didn't even drive many of the cars that he wrote about in his Muscle Car Confidential. So here's the thing: they had a hard-on for Mopar. Who knows why? And most of the time, street Hemi cars that were tested by the press had been pounded by knuckleheads and people from, magazines that had no business trying to launch a car. So they were in the worst kind of tune. And I think also you get, Charlie Dodge from Pacers Automotive puts his tune on the Rammy. They get these pictures, this guy's in there screwing it, and who knows what he's really doing. And who knows if they were really, like, from the Dodge News Bureau, if they were like well sorted. But if it's a street Hemi, that's a pretty good combination. They work good. An automatic's a better car because it's nothing to go out of tune. I didn't set my valves once in 2 years.
Really?
2832 was fine. I got him Bob Hart. He says, he brought it over. He said, these are fine. And 28,032, that whole thing. And it was fine. And so I don't know. My Hemi Charger experience was amazing. It was, I could zonk almost anything back then, except for, and you had to have slicks on it. Otherwise, it was a 14.8 car. You could spin through first and then drive.
Did yours still have the heat tubes up to the intake manifold?
Oh, it had headers on it, right? So that was the thing.
That's a big thing. That's a big thing.
It's true. But the 426, I did some stories with Donnie Wood at Rad. We had a 426 bone stock with manifolds. It made 480 horsepower on the dyno, the same dyno that big block Chevy 396 will make 430 on. You know what I mean? So it was a real dyno. And a 396, 325. But the 426 it wasn't junk. A lot of guys.
Well, I'm not saying that it was junk, but when you compare those two cars, stock to stock, right, on a drag strip,
the Buicks came out of off the line hard. But the thing is, the Buick drivers usually weren't the kind of guys who could be out there street racing. So I think that's why it came as a shock. They weren't seen much at the digs, probably.
Jonathan Kelsey, thank you for the super chat. Hi Tony. Speaking of torque, I got the line on a Magnum truck V10. All right. 8-liter, 480 cubic inches. Would you happen to know what camshaft options for this would be? I do not.
That's a good question. Yeah, reground probably. And the Viper cams don't work in those things. They're different.
I've been making custom intake. They have a distributor. Bro, that's totally out of my wheelhouse. But maybe somebody here in the chat has an idea. But you're asking the wrong guy. But thank you for the super chat, John. And just for anybody who's joined us lately, got a bunch more people on now than we had before. Everybody, I hope you're having a happy Easter. If you celebrate Passover, I hope you enjoy your just. Everybody's having a holiday today. I hope you're enjoying it. Okay, let's see.
The Magnum V10. That's a crazy engine. They're heavy. I will warn them. If it's free, okay, but they're heavy, But yeah.
So junkyard muscle cars, right? That's what we were talking about, right? Sure. I have found in my life, I found 2 426 Hemi cars in junkyards.
Wow.
The first one was when I was 17 years old. It was a place called R. And I told this story before. I'm not going to tell the story again, because there's more to it than just this part of it. But there was a junkyard on Staten Island called RCL. It was directly across the street from Yacarino's, where I saw my first Hemi ever, right? It was a Chrysler Firepower in a New Yorker.
Yeah.
And me and my friend Carl Wiggles, we were 13, 14, and we would take the bus out to Yacarino's, and we would walk around there, and we found this I don't even know what year it was, but it was a Firepower motor in a New Yorker. It was next to an ice cream truck, and we would take the bus out there every Saturday morning and make our pilgrimage to the Hemi car and just sit there and just look at it. And it was like, wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes.
So maybe a year or two after that, this is probably around 1978, 1979, something like that. There was an RCL, which was a junkyard across the street from Yacarino's, and up on top of a 3-car pile was a 66 Belvedere, a green 66 Belvedere Hemi car, and the 426 Hemi emblems were on it. And I climbed up there, and there were parts in the trunk, and so it was a legit Hemi car. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And then about 10 years ago, and I forget which site this was on. Give me a second now. What was I looking at? Was it Craigslist? It might have been Craigslist. It might have been something else. I don't remember exactly. But I'm going through it, and I was looking for Roadrunners, right? I was specifically searching for Roadrunners. And Roadrunner pops up in the junkyard in Lexington, Tennessee, right, which is close to like Fort Knox. okay, which is about 2 hours from here.
Yeah.
So there's pictures of this Roadrunner. This is not about a Hemi car. There's pictures of this Roadrunner, and you can see this thing is like, it's been there forever. It's been there for the longest time. But it's basically all there, and they're asking like $500 for this car.
Wow.
So I'm like, I mean, this may be worth taking a look at.
This is 10 years ago, you're saying?
About 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, in that range, right? So I'm looking at now, I'm interested in the car, and I'm looking at the pictures carefully. And there's one, the motor's out of it, and you can see where on the windshield, they broke out the bottom corner of the windshield, and somebody stole the VIN tag off of it. I don't care about this, right? I'll title it one way or another. But I'm looking carefully now, and the K-frame is on the car, and it's a Hemi K-frame. And it's got a 3-speed wiper motor in it.
Wow.
And I'm like,
that one.
it's a Hemi car. Somebody grabbed the VIN out of it. It's a Hemi car.
Wow.
I call up the number. I says, I'll take that Roadrunner. I'll be there right away.
Yeah.
I jump in my car. I run as fast as I possibly can to Lex. I mean, I broke all kinds of. I was like, the paint was burning off the hood of my car to get out there. Right. I get to the yard. The car is all the way in the back of the yard. In this place, the section that hasn't been touched in eons. And there's the car. And I walk over to it, and there's the K-frame. And I'm like, I just scored a Hemi Roadrunner for $500. Now I'm looking around the rest of the car. It had been sitting on the ground since the 70s.
So it was crumbling. You pick it up, it crumble?
I open the door. There is nothing, like literally nothing. I reached underneath. I could feel the torque box, right? But it crumbled in my hand.
Yeah.
It was just a crunchy. There was nothing there. The bottom of the K-frame was completely rotted away.
Oh, yeah.
And I just said, Dominus Nobiscus, and I drove home empty-handed.
Wow. Along those lines, here's a picture right here. Okay, like, see that right there? You can see what that is, right?
Sure.
Okay, what year is that, do you think? When was this picture taken?
Oh, okay, that's not fair because
anything's cool. It's right now. It's right now. That car is still sitting. I'll just say it's near Auburn, Massachusetts. I'll say nothing more. It's in the hands of a fellow who his dad owned it new. It was a thing in Worcester, Mass, and it's going to get fixed up someday. Now, nobody busts on them and that kind of crap. But right now, you can drive by it. It's still the bag over it comes and goes. That's a 440 6-pack 4-speed car. Now, when I took my pictures here, I didn't go into the yard. That's why those shots are from the street. I don't touch shit. I don't go in there and dig around. It's not mine. I'd be pissed. But I'm shooting. I did run up, and the rear axle had the little tiny lip. I said, okay, no Dana. Okay, so it's probably a 440 automatic. Yawn, whatever. I left. Well, the 8 3/4 was put in there after the Dana was taken out during the fuel crisis, right? So it was a 440 6-pack 4-speed car. The engine's still in it. I didn't open the hood, not my business, but other people have taken pictures. They've gone in there and done it. And the owner of the car had left notes. Everybody leaves notes, and they're not returned. With that said, that's right now. So they're still out there and all that kind of stuff. But it's a little sad. And the nose, the bottom, the guy had batteries, and it's all paper. It's gone. The acid fumes from the batteries, But it's interesting. And there's enough superbirds in the world to go around. I hate to say it. I love them. But with it said, it sucks to see a thing like that. But it's also kind of nice to see a thing like it's kind of like, wow, they're still kind of like that, And you don't want to see that. But, you got to wonder if down the road, Hellcats are going to sit in backyards like that. Probably,
Yeah, but there won't be any parts for them.
Yeah, well, I know what you mean. I mean, you got to remember there's something like 70,000 Hellcats right now, more than that. There's a ton of them things, which is awesome. It's kind of like a street.
But each of them also has like 100 different computers and processors in them. Yeah. And the chances of those things being available 15 or 20 years down the road are slim to none.
I'm with you. I remember when the Mustang got EFI. Oh no! And the IROC got computer command and control. Well, the aftermarket rose to it. I'm sure.
That's different. That's different. Those were simple, basic function processors. Today, with the CAN buses and 15 different major computers and all these, it ain't gonna happen. It's just too many parts for the aftermarket to support.
Yeah, we can go analog with this stuff. The good news, a lot of states, after 10 years, I'm blown away. In California, you got to watch your ass because anything after 75, you have to go through smog every other year. You have to. And it sucks because like a 5-liter Mustang, any mods, you got to take that stuff up unless you have an EO, right? But in Massachusetts, of all places, right behind California and being a little strict, it's 10 years and you're no more smog. So I imagine there'll be, piggyback workaround stuff on those cars. The metal parts are going to be good forever. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
true that touch screen, that screen thing in the dash. Every time it gets bigger, I say, no, not bigger. You know what I mean? You get this thing. Well, the touch screen's now 25 feet wide. Yeah, it's going to take a crap, and it's going to immobilize. But there'll be jumper boxes and crap like that because those cars aren't going to be useless. But it's going to be interesting to see how everything, the Coyote Mustangs trickling on down to high school parking lots. It's going to happen. I hope. I mean, there's a lot of cars out there, more now than, and we don't have Buicks and Pontiacs and that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of muscle.
We talked about this before, and I hope you're right.
Well, what'll happen? Will people crush them and throw them away? No, you know what I mean. The market will rise to it. I think.
I hope you're right. I don't see how it's possible, but I hope that you're right.
Yeah.
I hope that you're right.
Yeah, there's plenty to go around. That's the good news.
Bill, thank you for the super chat. Going back to a live you did a while back, what's the best muscle car oddity that you've found in a junkyard?
Boy, it's kind of hard to what to leave out. Kind of. I mean, I did find an old Rally 350. It's Sundin Auto Specialties in Shelby, North Carolina. It's probably still there. Sundell, I think it is. They sell frames and southern parts. They're a good bunch of guys, But they knew what they had, and they had a nice curated stash of stuff that they grabbed from other spots. It looked like an old junkyard, but these are things they retrieved and parked in their back 40. But it was an old Rally 350, which the thing about those, I mean, they could have the W31, but most had, it was, I think, a 310 horse or something. It was a special little 350. Theoretically, it was a double machine with hand-assembled parts. It was a 350 station wagon, but it was a little better, But it was bright yellow and it had the bumpers. Everything was there. Had the posi rear axle. Those even, I think they had a special axle. I think they came with a standard 342. But
they were beautiful cars. My friend Kiwi has a customer that has one. It's over at his place occasionally, and I need to do a feature on that car. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah,
and it's got a functional fresh air system and all of that.
It was a junior supercar, as we know, 70, 71. If the VIN, if you had a 4-speed, that kind of thing, a lot of those were 3-speeds. And this one was an automatic, but that was a weird thing to find with the original graphics on it. It wasn't like a GSX, but it was still cool. Or 402.
I think that the oddest thing I found in the junkyard was probably about that same era when I was a teenager, and there was a 66. I don't remember if it was a 66 or a 67 car in it. There was 383 4-speed 4-door.
Wow. Yeah.
So, but that's about it. And I know that there's far odder than that, but that's the craziest thing that I've come across.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, it just, the things, you can't begin to buy everything, but luckily I took pictures of stuff over the years, and this book, again, it's out of print, who cares anyway, but it's a thing where I'd go around whenever I could, and I'd own the car with pictures, put it like that. But I took pictures of a lot of cars. It just broke my heart. This thing right here, this was in Silver Lake, California. It's a Valiant with Bonneville race history. A guy named George Medlock, I think it was, but this car actually set records at Bonneville, and here's the pictures of it. And the guy who owned it was a pretty serious, but that was on the side of the road in Silver Lake, California. Yeah, right above Burbank and stuff like that. You start driving up these side roads and you see these houses and stuff. That's a place where you can't just park an old car because the neighbors will flip out because their $1 million house is only worth $0.999 million. You know what I mean? But you can't have old cars. But this poor guy had a bunch of. He had to get rid of them, and that was a former Bonneville. It wasn't a Hyperpack car. It had Webers, and that stuff was still in the trunk. And I couldn't afford it. It was $1,800, so I didn't buy it. But it didn't go to the junkyard. The guy knew what he had. But it's weird to see things sometimes.
There's a buddy Dallas.
Wow.
Dallas, what's going on, brother man? You never told me about that. You found the Goldfinger AGX, AFX, in a junkyard in Hawaii. You never told me about that.
Wow. Goldfinger. Would that have been Mark Danakus' car? Was that a 64 Dodge?
Danakus?
Yeah.
That was a blower guy.
Dan Truck Superchargers. Yes.
No, and he got snuffed in some kind of weird deal.
Okay.
Back in when drag racing ran on powder. the cars ran on nitro, but the people ran on powder. And Mark got snuffed at about that time. But no, that wasn't him. That was who the hell was the Goldfinger car? Yeah.
And there's this thing here. This was a trip, literally. This was found in Colony, New York, and this was a 64 race Hemi 4-speed car. It was altered in the 60s, And then a guy, what's his face? A guy down in Florida. But this thing was being pulled out of a garage, frozen in time around 1990 or so. Guys going by, takes these pictures, emails them to me, and then I forget his name. A Florida collector, Mark something, and he restored it back to a '64 4-speed car, which is okay, but pulled the soul out of it. Pulled the soul
Yeah,
out of it. That was an actual stretch wheelbase funny car
right.
called Trip in 1965-6, and wow, so that was being pulled out of a driveway in 1990, and this guy stopped, screeched to a halt. Luckily, it didn't get crushed, but it was Mark Werner, not Werman, Werner, a guy named Werner, Gary Werner, down in Florida, and he was
Yeah, it rings a bell.
yeah, '64 4-speed car, and so he did the right thing with it. But it was also, oh man, I wonder what do you do with those bits of quarter? I'll take them. I'll put them on my pillow. I like to have them.
There's one car that's always puzzled me what happened to it. This is going back around 1989, 1990. This is on Staten Island, and it was in the Castleton Avenue area. And I was in a rush to get someplace up there. I don't remember what it was. There was a reason why I didn't stop or didn't have time to stop. It was some sort of hustle emergency thing. But I was someplace down in the Castleton Avenue with the Stapleton area of Staten Island. Anybody who's familiar with that, it's not the greatest neighborhood. And it was a black 71 Hemi Cuda that looked like it had been through the mill, right? Had, the typical New York City dense rust, the whole bit, but it was a billboard car, so you couldn't, there was no mistaking it for what it was. It was a billboard car. It had a shaker hood but no scoop because the motor was out of it, and it was sitting on like just regular black steel wheels.
Yeah.
And I made a mental note that as soon as I could go back there and check out what's going on with this car. And I got back there maybe the next day, the day after, and it was gone, no trace of it. I always wondered what happened to that car. Anyway, it was a black car, white billboard stripe.
Wow. Jeez.
Always wondered what happened to that car. If anybody has any idea, throw it in there.
Yeah. And one thing I see, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, he mentions the Goldfinger AFX Hawaii. There was a car called the Goldfinger Hawaiian style, right? It was red and gold, altered wheelbase, '64 Dodge, independent car. And that car was actually photographed in some kind of a drag news thing being barrel rolled on purpose by its driver. I have those pictures on my computer. I don't know how to put them up here.
It wasn't done on purpose.
Well, they made a second run. And you could tell the guy was screwing with it or something like that.
It was a match race. Yeah. I've seen that picture. I've seen the picture, and I heard firsthand stories from this way back when. Yeah. No, it was a 2 out of 3 match race, and the car got the back tires. One of the back tires off into the dirt. It flipped. It barrel rolled, but the car was still okay. It crushed the roof down a little bit. The sheet metal was all messed up. It was a 2 out of 3 match race. That was the first run. So they figured, well, we got 2 more runs. The car's still good, so they took it out. And they sent it.
Okay, because I will say that the images you can see, and it's a photo sequence about maybe 7 or 8 pictures. You can see the thing, the doors open, and the guys are laughing. It's just like maybe they were just responding. And the second shot, there it is, the magnesium torque thrust on the front with a big fat tire, weird up front, some Stevies in the back, and the original 2-piece axles still in the back of that thing, which is nuts. But anyway, that car was around, and Mark Danakis, his name was on the side of that thing. There's earlier shots of that thing at Irwindale. And that's if this guy here was talking about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, if that car was found in the junkyard, I want to know when. And because everyone was, what happened to it? And when he found it in the junkyard, was the roof crunch? Did it go back to Hawaii from that match race in the Midwest? So that's a car that needs that's a '64 race Hemi, that was then funnied in '65-6. And it was a beautiful car.
And rolled at least once.
Yeah, it's a tender fender on the front. There was pictures of that thing was before it was destroyed in that accident. It appeared in magazines a few times. I'm curious anyway if he has any feedback when it was anyway.
Levi's Backyard Performance. Thank you for the super chat, Levi. The weirdest thing I found was a '55 Chevy with an inline 6 with a home built supercharger on it. It was so rusty that half the door was gone anyway. I'm at 286 subs. Tony and Steve, I'm trying to keep up. Levi's Backyard Performance. He's still trying to get his 500 subs for the No Name Nationals. So by all means, anybody who's interested, wants to support guys trying to get their stuff over to the No Name Nationals, Levi's Backyard Performance. Go over there and check him out. Let's see. Oh, Evan C, is this live stream going to stay up? I'd like to watch it later. Yes. We generally take our regular live streams, like our regular Sunday night shows, we take them down after about 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, because it's kind of timely. It's just us talking with the viewers. Like we don't, but we leave these up whenever we have Steve on or a guest like that. We always leave these up, so it'll always be there to be found. So, let's see. Okay, we have some spam. All right, we're going to have to get rid of that.
Is it a Bitcoin ad or something like that? I get those things.
No, this is best cam fun, hot girls, blah, blah, blah.
Great. Send them over. No, I'm kidding.
This is a good question. Rainy Slant 6. What about whatever happened to any of the original 1960 Hyperpack 170 Plymouth Valiant four-door sedans built for the NASCAR Compact and Cannonball races? I would love to find something like that.
Yeah, at least one went on its roof, and then was speaking of a recurring theme, and it was rolled over and continued to race. Now, here's the thing: I was at Hot Rod Magazine for 7 years, and there was a thing called the Peterson Archives. And what you could do if you were on staff is go down to the guy at the front, get the key, go into the archives. There's nobody watching anybody. It was kind of a weird thing, but it was photo archives, and you could actually go to Motor Trend's coverage of the 1960 Daytona 500 and the Baby Grand, all that kind of stuff, and get the photos from that event. So I did that. You get a contact sheet, and then you go in there, and you can look at pictures. It didn't wind up in the magazine, so I did some research on those things. And I'm sure they were spat up and chewed out, but there were four doors. It was the weird thing about them. But with that said, I don't know that any of them exist to this day. I'm sure. But Petty had one, Lee Petty, and all that thing. But they were pretty amazing little cars, And yeah,
well, they dominated that race.
Yeah, and Tom Hoover had a Hyperpack powered Lancer that his wife drove. Then that's how crazy he was. You know what I mean? I've driven Hyperpacks. They're okay. There's nothing, and they'll run. The only thing they will do that's kind of weird is they'll grow frost on the bottom of the plenum, and that was in California. So I could only imagine on a cold winter day, you probably get some carburetor ice because that carb's hanging out there 2 feet from the engine, and it's cold. But Hyperpacks are cool. And Doug Dutra and Clifford Performance reproduced those things, so they're around. They're hard to find, but they're out there.
What's the name of the place in Australia?
Yeah. It's Tornado or something. Yeah.
No. They make the Hyperpack manifold. It's called Aussie Speed.
Aussie? No. Aussie Speed or Aussie Performance or something like that.
I can't think of the name of it. So it'll pop into my head or somebody will remember what it is.
They do a long ram. It's not a Hyperpack, but it's close. It's a long ram. It's a cantilever type deal. But they don't do a pure Hyperpack because, frankly, it's a bit it's restricted in some ways. It's more for looks. They run, but they made a real performance manifold. They make a long one and a longer one. I tried them both on a Slant 6. It was 6 horsepower. It was cool. Sorry, not to see us how they asked.
Mopar Den, thank you for the super chat. You're at 281. Okay, we need to get Mopar Den some subs. Still trying to get to 500. Just posted a YouTube short of framing the Bottle Rocket broadcast sheet. That's great. Bottle Rocket's one of our project cars, and he wanted the broadcast sheet out, so we sent him the broadcast sheet. He framed it, evidently. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. But yeah, Mopar Den, another guy looking to get his 500 subs so he can enter the no-name nationals. So just so that we remember now, okay, this is an event being put on by John Wilburn and Dallas from the AHRA, and all the information, just go to the No Name Nationals. All the information is there, and anybody can come and spectate, but if you want to participate, you have to have 500 subscribers. And so we've got the No Name 500 going on right now. So all of these guys like Mopar Dan and Levi, they're all trying to get their 500 subs so that they can bring their car down to the No Name Nationals and make smoke with everybody else. So please, guys, support our friends here that are trying to get the subs. And let's, the more the merrier. We're all going to have fun out there.
Is that restricted to like 200 cars, or is it as many as it shows up? It's
as many as shows up.
Cool.
I think they've got about 200 cars now.
Cool.
John Wilburn is in here, and I said, I know Dallas is here. If they want to jump in and tell us how many entries they have, or if there is a limitation, but I don't know of any limitations. So Big Mike Hoopty Barn, thank you for the super chat, my brother. Welcome back, Steve. Loving the Hemi Charger build. Thanks, Uncle Tony, for the No Name National support starting tomorrow on my abandoned 440 RV rescue. Go for it, man. And thank you for the super chat. Let's see. Kim is saying there will be some limit, but it's still open. Kim over here is building. He's building a supercharged mini bike. Okay. There's a mini bike challenge. Okay, at this race, a supercharged mini bike with they're using an oil pump as a supercharger.
Huh. Driving off a chain or a belt or something, or
I don't know, but it's like one of the coolest things I've ever heard of, right? So go over there to Kim's channel. Kim fixes things, and I'm sure there's updates on this project. It's just cool.
Yeah. And I wonder, is the mini bike challenge? Does a guy named Joe Sepergandio have anything to do with that? The mini bike challenge. Just curious. If it doesn't ring a bell, don't worry. Yeah.
It doesn't ring a bell to me, Mr. Will. I missed your super chat.
Oh.
We'll part then. Levi. I'm going way back, Mr. Will. Oh, wait, there it is. Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Will. And thank you for your super chat.
Yeah.
Steve, how is the Ram Charger going? Can't wait to see it run.
Well, it's now April 17th. It's getting to be warm. It's out in my garage. It's cold. It was a nasty winter, so I pulled the engine and stuff. I guess it may be frustrating. My primary thing on my YouTube channel is Junkyard crawls, but I fill it in with Ram Charger. So right now it's dormant. However, I'm going down to Jim Cramer's in Pennsylvania in another couple of weeks to get a floor pan and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a skateboard. It slows down and kicks up and slows down, but it's going well. It's just sitting right now. It'll be something best appreciated in hindsight when the videos are all done. But right now, I'm still building the chimney slowly but surely.
So along those same lines, 426 Hemi asking Steve, how is the stroker motor?
440 source, they can't get rods and pistons. They have cranks. So I might have to go 440 cubes or wait until the crank rod situation. So 440 source, they have budget price parts. They're great. And they said we can send you the stroker crank, but we'll have to back order the rods and pistons. Well, that doesn't help, So yeah, so that's the answer on that one. Right now, it's probably going to be a 440 because I can't wait until the thing. They have heads, but the rotating parts are short.
Paul Shea wants to know if you're going to the No Name Nationals.
Might go. Depends on the timing and stuff. Yeah. Great. I love the idea of that. I do. Yeah.
Well, you're an official YouTuber now.
Yeah, might do. It's a thing. My leash is long and short at the same time. Put it like that. Now that's in October. Is that correct?
It's John. What's the exact date? Anybody know the exact date on it? I should remember this, but I have these holes.
I think it's October 1, 2, 3, or September 29th through October. That's Barrett Jackson for me. It's Barrett Jackson, Houston. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Paul saying I'll pick you up in Connecticut. Buff Campo he will be there. The elusive Buff Del Campo. The weirdest builds are the best. I agree with you, Ghetto Billy. September 30th to October 1st.
Yeah, Barrett Jackson, Houston for me. Yeah.
Let's see. Chris wants to know if you were worried about rattlesnakes in the Texas Mopar sale.
As a matter of fact, yeah. If you go to my YouTube channel, there's about 170 videos. And Tony, you know about the Great Texas Mopar Horde Auction Event thing?
I watched a bunch of your videos on it, but I didn't.
Yeah, for what it's worth, that Spanky Assiter was Barrett Jackson's lead auctioneer for many, many years, and now he has his own thing, Freedom Car Auctions. This fellow John Haney passed away, left 280 Mopars out in the Texas prairie. They were approached by an on-site crusher, and they were thinking about $200 a whack times 280 cars, 65 grand. Instead, they had an auction, and they got $800,000. And in fact, one of the cars at the No Name Nationals is the Holy Goat.
Holy Goat.
Yeah, that car was. I did a video on that thing, and it was sold for $300. I couldn't believe it. But he scored, and he got it running. Good for him, Pole Barn Garage. But anyway, the text. So yes, rattlesnakes were very real. We found one. They killed it. It was slithering along at dawn. They whacked it. Apparently, that's a state crime. Oh boy. Anyway, so it's dead. It's gone. But if you go to the YouTube channel, you'll see the videos on that. But the thing of it is, we were tasked with, me and Ryan Condry from Fatfoot Films. The two of us went out there for 9 days, and we shot 150 walk-around videos in a rip. And we wore those shin guards because the idea of walking up on a car and then getting that little pinprick in your ankle and then being life flighted to an emergency room for a $20,000 save. Yet there's refrigerated. You can't buy it. It's like a pen at CVS. A rattlesnake bite is something you die from generally. So we wore those fiberglass. They said you're wearing those things. I put them on. So yeah, that was very real.
Don't you suck the poison out?
That'll kill the guy who sucks it. It's bad news. Yeah, rattlesnakes. The movies, I know. I was thinking, yeah, get out of here, rattlesnakes. Well, there's poison snakes, I guess, everywhere. But the thing of it is, they said just stomp your feet when walking up to the car. Your bigger problem is spiders. So just don't reach into a place where there's a bunch of spider webs. It's probably a black widow. But that was real. We didn't get bit, but we found one. There's 6 foot, and there's a video. It's dead. I'm sitting next to it with a can of Red Bull. And if you want to see a freaky looking rattlesnake face, check it out on my YouTube channel.
Years ago, I was working on a customer's car, and had been setting, and nothing special, it was just a regular car, and I had been setting on the side of their house, and I got bit by a black widow.
Wow.
So I didn't know what to do exactly, but the whole thing about sucking the venom out always remained. So I grabbed a piece of vacuum hose.
Okay.
And I put the vacuum hose. There was 2 little bites, right? And I put the piece of fuel line actually I used. Put the piece of fuel line over it and sucked as hard as I could.
Yeah.
And I never got any type of reaction.
Wow. Are you sure it was a black widow?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I've heard it said that they generally kill older or younger people, but they also say if it doesn't kill you, you'll wish it did. I don't know. I never got bit by one, but in California, junkyards, they were everywhere. And out there, the thing was, they say that black widow, the web is really thick and crazy and weird. And they say if you see that, don't reach in there, like a wheelhouse or something like that. So you just get a stick and you take it out of there. But yeah, most of that stuff runs when you come near it. But yeah, if you surprise it, yes.
Well, you start slithering around in the car. You know what I mean?
That's right.
But anyway, Nick Bush, thank you for the super chat. What would be your guys' favorite V8 engine from the 50s or early 60s that are rare to see or hear about today? Rare. You go first, man.
Well, a Chevy 409 is interesting, but the Packard V8 was something kind of wacky, and they only made those for I think 3 model years. And so Packard, the problem with those guys was they waited way too long.
Huge engine.
Yeah, they're not, to look at them, a Cadillac and a Packard look kind of the same, but they're longer. Here's why: they have a 5-inch bore space. The Packard was ready to go 500 cubes. They were ready to go nuclear, and they didn't get to do it because Packard and Studebaker merged, and the Packard V8 was scrapped after 3 years. But the Packard, the 374 dual quad Caribbean motor, that's a pretty crazy little critter, And
that's in the day when a 4-inch bore was big.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what I mean, the bore spacing was 5 inches. In other words,
right.
Yeah.
Right. I know. I'm saying that they designed engines around like a maximum bore, a maximum bore of like 4 1/8 inches, right? Most of the engines that were produced back then had 4-inch and smaller bores.
Yeah, big ones. Yeah, 4.7 on a wrap motor, I think it is. So,
but before then, you have to go back to when the Packard was actually designed.
Yeah.
Right.
The only other engine like that, the Cadillac 472-500, also has a 5-inch bore spacing a decade later. Yeah, right on. Yeah. And so, how about you, Tony? What's your engine of the day?
Oh God,
348 maybe. I don't know.
If you see, I'm going to say it, and people are going to like, he's such an idiot, right? Floating power 6s. Anytime I come across a flathead 6, a Chrysler flathead 6, I get very nostalgic. From when I was a kid, because they were still around when I was a kid, but they were kind of rare, and they had this kind of rattling purr about them.
Yeah.
That you know what I'm talking about, right?
I had a '54 Savoy 3-speed manual, and it was it was slow,
Yeah.
and no overdrive either. So like on the Mass Pike, you're going 70, and you're abusing it, to be honest,
Yeah.
and it was slower than heck. But it was interesting. Silver engine, 201 cubes, what the hell it was.
216 inches.
Yeah, 218. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine was a 230, I think it was. But yeah.
Yeah, they came in different sizes, but the 216 is the one that stands out in my mind. When on occasion I come across one of those, I get very nostalgic. I feel like I want to hug it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But he's asking about V8, favorite V8. I know you're expecting me to say the obvious, right?
Right.
But
Studebaker had some weird stuff. The 289, not a Ford.
stuff like that. I think AMC motors. I come across AMC motors and I get excited.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just came across a Jeep in a junkyard a couple of weeks ago. Shot a quick video on it, and it had a 304 in it, and I was looking at it, and I wanted to take it home.
Yeah.
I like oddball stuff. Let's see. Clem Bob is saying the old flathead 6 was used in a lot of farm industrial applications, combines, tractors, pumps, irrigation pumps. I will guarantee someplace in the world right now, there's one of those engines still at work.
Yeah.
They're quietly chugging away in the dark.
Yeah, crazy story. I do some work with the Blueprint Engines out in Kearney, Nebraska. Well, they have a secondary business which is almost as big as their crate engine thing, making industrial engine. I think it's called Primus or something like that. But the Chevy 4-cylinder pushrod engine, they still make those things, and they're sold to people with pumps out in the middle of nowhere, pumping. And if the pushrod 4, which came along in 1962 in the Nova, they still make that. Crazy. Anyway, or it's a descendant of it. They have fuel injection, electronic, but it's still the same metal.
It's still the same. Well, Merc Cruiser did that for the boats up until I guess it was like the early 2000s. They were still using that Chevy. I bought my kid a boat. It's over at his house. I have to go get it running, and it's that motor. Yeah, it's the old Chevy 2.4 bagger.
Yeah. And it's funny. A lot of folks don't realize the 4-cylinder was in Chevy Novas through 1970. The VIMB 111, very seldom seen, and never in a wagon. But 4-door, never in a Nova. It would be a Chevy 2, a stripper. But 4-cylinder Chevy 2 was very real. They pop up here and there.
And that engine is just 2 cylinders lopped off of the 236.
Yeah.
Which was another great engine. You couldn't kill those things. They were bulletproof motors, and they had the sweetest sound. I don't know why. They had a sound that was very unique. It has the same 153624 firing order as the Chrysler. But the Chevy inline has a very unique sound that I could never put my finger on exactly what it was.
I know that Chevys with power glides and stock exhaust systems, there's a little bit of whine to them. It's like
it's the power glide. Yeah.
It's my grandmother had a '65 Impala SS 283 two-barrel power glide. It wasn't a 409, nothing like that. No 396 mid-year, but it used to make a whining sound. It either was low on fluid or that's what they do. I don't know why, but yeah. The glide. Nothing scarier than kick down in a power glide, going 60 and 50 in a power glide. Because there's no middle gear, But they did it,
Let's see. Okay. The Chevy 194 has a 4-cylinder crank 2 great engine. Yeah. There were so many great engines. Steve and I are both Mopar guys. But and he's like me, right? We have an appreciation for everything. And it's actually one of the things that, is like the Mopar superiority complex. One of the things is you look at these other engines, and while you love them, and it's like, oh, this is so cool and it's so awesome, you compare it directly to the Mopar equivalent, and it's like, but what we have is better.
Cast rods, armor steel, what?
Sorry. Right. I'll geek out over a Pontiac motor, but at the same time, it's like, but I know that my Mopar is better.
I just made a connection. The Super Duty 455 had forge rods made by Continental, and we were talking earlier about checker cabs. Continental was the manufacturer of the generic 6-bangers.
That's right.
Yeah, Continental. It has nothing to do with Lincoln. Continental Midwest company. But yeah, anyway. But it's weird that Continental supplied rods to GM for the 455 Super Duty, and they had a shortage issue, and that's why the Super Duty 455, one of the nails in its coffin, let alone the emissions problems. But anyway, yeah. Last gasp for performance, 73, 74, the Super Duty.
Thumper, Tony, you're a minor Pontiac geek compared to me. Hey, I was a technical editor for High Performance Pontiac for 3 years.
Yeah.
But no, I know. You are definitely a Pontiac guy. I get it, Thumper. Let's see.
Now, Pontiacs, I mean, I love them all. I was never one of those guys, Mopar, no car. I mean, you miss a lot. But, Chrysler, I just happen to like them a lot, But Pontiacs had some good stuff, too. Yeah. Thank you.
Lobo GTX is asking, Steve, do you know about Argentinian A-bodies?
Well, I know, in Argentina, cars like certain Studebakers, stuff like that was continued in production. And in Mopar land, Mexico, a lot of interesting right-hand drive, weird stuff. It's like having a cousin that you didn't know you had. But yeah, I don't know like everything about it, but yeah, neat stuff. Argentina was certainly, and I think it was, what was it? There was some car that was made in Argentina for years and years and years. The Hudson Jet was made for years. The 52.3 that came and went so quickly here, but they made it in Argentina. There's a lot of stuff in Argentina that's like, that's the Rambler Classic, the round one from like 64ish. They made in Argentina. And Australia, a lot of weird stuff in Australia, right-hand drives and stuff like that. Yeah.
There were a lot of like really odd but neat cars that came out of the whole South American market, like the Mexican Super Bs. Argentina had their, and we never got any of that stuff here in the States, and it's a shame. There were so many cool cars, so many cool combinations. The styling it always looks a little off to us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the South American cars,
yeah.
But still, the option packages, like they had high performance, they had 2-barrel, they had what we know as the Super 6.
Yeah.
All the way through the 60s.
Yeah.
High performance packages based on the Site 6. They had 318, 4-barrel 318s all through the late 60s and the early 70s. We got none of that stuff.
Yeah. And on the Australian 2-barrel Australian 6, slant 6 2-barrel Australia, the lid is air clean. It's a Max Wedge air cleaner lid on those things. Yeah, a friend of mine, this guy Dave Mahoney from South or whatever, Victoria, Australia. When he'd come to LA and stay at my house for a couple of weeks, he'd buy cars, ship them back down, and whatever it was. He'd always bring me some 6-cylinder 2-barrel air cleaner lids. He didn't know what I wanted them for. I said, dude, these are Max Wedge. Now the base was 2-barrel stuff, but the lid. So it's funny because it's the whole thing about where stuff comes from on your car. It's not always from Dodge or Plymouth or Ford or Pontiac. There are suppliers. I think Fram, far more than paper filters, they also, I think, were in charge of stamping the lids and bases, I think, Fram. And so Fram, I guess, said, hey, this is an air cleaner lid that's done in America, 64 Max Wedge, but let's run them in Australia. So it's a whole world that exists, but where do you find the data on it? It's a frustrating thing. Yeah, anyway.
Dick goes in, Brazil made Volkswagen Beetles for years after VW stopped making them. Yeah, a lot of stuff happened down in South America, but again, see, it's a void to us up here.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, it's funny, they put a wall around, like we need a wall now to keep shit out, right? But back then they put up a marketing wall around us.
I guess
we never got any of the stuff that you guys, even news of the stuff that you guys had out there.
I guess it's need to know or something like that. But with that said, Brazilian at Barrett Jackson, as we know, the 23 window Volkswagen Type 2 bus is a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, we stopped making them, I think 67, I think was the last year here. Well, we keep getting on the auction block 1975 23 window bus, Brazilian. And the 23 window, it's a kit you get from this guy, Old Grumpy Man or something like that, Old Man Metal or something like that. But you can convert. But in Australia or in Brazil, those the bikini face buses were made for many more years, and now they're appearing. Now they always have a metric speedometer, and I believe there's a BH in the prefix on the VIN, which is up above your head, which is their goofy things. But so Brazil, Volkswagens, and people are cashing in. It's crazy. You know how it is. The auction scene is usually a flavor of the year. Austin Healey 3000, Amphicar, Futureliner. Well, not this, but the bus, the 23 window bus, those are $150,000 all of a sudden, like for the last 5 years. So, but now people are, where do I find them? Brazil, and people are importing them and doing that.
I went on a hunt a while back. I didn't pursue it, but the recoil wheels, 1969 Kelsey Hayes recoil wheels,
Yeah.
all went to Mexico. So the story behind that, you guys weren't familiar with this, right? Chrysler didn't have a rally wheel. They had the Magnum 500s, which was really a Ford wheel, and they started offering that in 1967. So 67 and 68, you had a choice of your 14-inch the road wheels, okay, which were the Magnum 500s, and they were only available in the 14-inch size. For some reason, Ford had them in the 15-inch size, but Chrysler could only use them in the 14-inch size. So Chrysler contracted Kelsey Hayes to do a road wheel, specifically for the Chryslers. So for 1969, so they came out with this aluminum wheel, right? So a mag style wheel, and they're kind of weird looking. You know, they're not the prettiest things, but they were Chrysler specific.
Argent toning and stuff. They were interesting. A lot of different textures.
They were interesting. And if you look at the sales brochures, the sales stuff for the 1969 cars, most of them are wearing these wheels, and they were available in 15
Chargers to Valiants. Yeah,
they had a small ball pattern, they had them in 14-inch big ball pattern, and they had them in 15-inch big ball pattern. A lot of people don't realize Hemi cars up until 1970 all had 14-inch rims. Oh, I'm sorry, the 15-inch rims. They didn't have anything but hubcaps. So if you ordered, let's say, a 68, 69 Roadrunner, right, with a Hemi, you got dog-dish hubcaps. Yeah. If you ordered a GTX Hemi, you get the full-size like station wagon wheels on the 15-inch Steelies. So for 69, they wanted to have a mag wheel, of course, right?
Appealing wheel.
So they put them on the cars, and the initial production. And what was happening is the lug nuts were coming loose. There was something about the way the lug nut fit in the wheel that over time, the short time, those nuts would come loose. So they recalled all of the cars that had been sold with those wheels. Now, everybody thought they would just scrap them, right? No, they sent them to Mexico. And for the next couple of years, 70 and 71, those wheels were optional on Mexican bull cars.
Wow.
So evidently, there was stacks of these things in Mexican junkyards. People pay $1,000 for one recoil wheel in decent shape here in this country. Because you get a car, let's say a 69 GTX or a 69 RT, that's spec to have that wheel.
It's 23, I think it is, or something like that. Yeah, the wheels are 23 or something.
Yeah, they pay a fortune for these freaking wheels. And then I hear that Mexico had them, and they were all over the junkyards for the longest time. So I was going to go down to Mexico out on a wheel hunting expedition and bring all of these things back, and it never happened.
Right. You know, it's funny. I was at SEMA maybe 12, 15 years ago, and I saw, I forget, I think they're being reproduced, the Kelsey Hayes wheels.
Yeah, they are now. Yeah.
Probably slightly different, the taper's different or something like that. But
yeah, it was something with the way the lug nut fit down into the wheel that if you didn't torque them just right or whatever it was, they would work themselves loose. And
it's funny too. A lot of people say, they were strictly B body. Well, there's a road test magazine of, I think, a 340 Barracuda, 69 A body with recall wheels on it in the magazine being driven and stuff. So they did them in small bolt too.
Yeah, they did them in all of the sizes that were available in the back then. But yeah, and then the next year they came out with the rally wheel that we know today. You saw those wheels on a Nova that was sold here as well. Okay. It would be a different bolt pattern. The Nova is 4 3/4 inch, and the Mopar is 4 1/2 inch. So probably not those wheels, but maybe something close to them.
Or a cousin, maybe. The same piece, just done Kelsey Hayes foreign market, or That's the thing. I will say this: the Detroit Public Library. If you ever get a chance, if you're an automotive journalist or pretend you are, walk in there and say, "I'm an automotive journalist." They'll hand you all kinds of paperwork. They still have that stuff, or at least 10 years ago. Dave Hakeem, who's, you probably know him, he's a great dude. And I go to Detroit from time to time, and he says, "Hey, let's go to the library." And when you go there, say, "Yeah, give me something on the Mexican slant six, whatever it is." And when you get these things, all these files and papers and stuff, and that's where you start to see that you have cousins far away that you didn't know you had, They're similar but not the same. So the Kelsey Hayes wheels for a Chevy application probably happens, but for Kelsey Hayes export or something, the Brazil division or whatever it might be. And it's funny, being in America, we're isolated to a degree, because we don't need to know about that stuff unless we're like really curious. And, anyway, yeah.
The guillotine wheels also ended up down in South America too.
What is that? I don't know that. What is that?
66, 67. Before they had the style wheel that they use like on the Chargers and stuff.
The steering wheel.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
They had a wheel. It was like that same basic design, but instead of 3 solid spokes, it had 3 dual spokes with a space in the middle.
Wow.
And if you were like, let's say, turning the wheel fast, you can get your finger stuck in there. And so they put a few of those in cars. They recalled them and they sent them all down to Mexico.
What does that say about our friends in Mexico? Come on.
What does it say about our
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Come on now. They're people.
These are no good. Send them to Mexico.
Yeah.
The British thing. Thank you so much. Have you ever bought a real lemon from car auction?
Well, I go ahead, Tony. Yeah.
I've never bought a car myself from a car auction, but I worked for and with dealers who bought countless. Everything was a friggin' lemon.
Well, I know a lot of times at wholesale auctions, dealers don't get a chance to start it, let alone drive it. So that happens. And of course, at Barrett or any other, I always say that nothing will make the most honest guy in the world look like a crook than an old car. You know what I mean? It goes in and thank you, and it kicks a rod around the corner. On the other side of the coin is what did the guy do to it? He's not telling you that he did to it. You never know. But cars do weird stuff, and they can make it look like a crook or like a lemon. But cars generally, when they're being sold, they're checked out to make sure there's nothing wrong. But again, cars can make you look like a cheat because they're cars. They do weird stuff. Anyway.
Thank you for the super chat, 2 Hacks Garage. Thank you. All right, Steve. I have a trivia question for you.
Okay. I'm going to fail. Go ahead.
I'm going to show you how much I know about motors. Okay? All right. There was almost a recall in 1968 on a common item that every car in the B-body line had. Okay? And they made a running change, I believe, starting in January 68. So you've got all the cars that were built from October, November, December 68, and then a change that was made in these cars that avoided the recall. But it's the one way to tell an early production 68 from a later production 68, and it's across the entire line of B-bodies. What is it?
Could it be the button in the door handle?
No.
It's black and silver. I don't know. There's so many. I don't know. Don't know.
The ashtray.
Okay. Huh.
Early built 68 cars have an ashtray that slides down.
Oh, okay.
Okay? But and it's padded.
Yeah.
Remember, the whole dashboard is padded.
Safety thing.
Okay. So what was happening was people were leaving their cigarettes in the ashtray, and it would burn back and burn the padding. So it was like a potential fire hazard. So beginning in January 68, all of the cars, both from January 68 to the end of production, had the regular ashtray that flips out.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So the insert is changed. That thing that screws into the dash hole with the sliders and stuff like that. Okay.
Right. The whole thing, like the ashtray on the early 68 slides down. You don't pull it out, it slides down.
Okay.
And then the later ones you pull out. And then the other 1968 only thing was the black door buttons.
Yeah. Okay.
The black plastic door buttons. It's the only year that has, and it's across the whole Mopar line.
I've never seen those degrade and turn to powder. You know what I mean?
Never,
right.
So
it just must have been a style thing, But yeah, okay. A lot of plastic stuff turns to powder. It's amazing. Junkyards are like the best classroom because you see stuff in its worst possible situation, exposed to rain.
I don't know if this is true, but it was pretty cool. Jason's Garage says the first car recall from Ford was for bugs in the seats.
Well, they use natural fibers. If you're talking 20s or 30s, I could maybe see, where the cottonhead chiggers or whatever they call them.
Bill, thank you again for the super chat. Speaking of Kelsey Hayes, how rare were the 4-piston caliber front brakes Chrysler A-bodies? Those brakes, those Kelsey Hayes brakes, sent more Chryslers, Mopars to the junkyard in the middle 70s or late 70s.
For leaking.
Any other thing, because you couldn't get pants for them.
Oh, pins. Okay. Huh.
So I was, let's say 1979, 1980, I was doing regular repairs, regular cars. And there was a period of time, those weren't big production, the Kelsey has the 4-piston calipers. And for a period of time, you could not get replacement pads for those things.
Okay.
Now the aftermarket's taken care of it, they're common, but back then, I guess it just wasn't the demand for it, and the major manufacturers for the pads didn't supply them. So those cars rode around until the rotors were worn, and you could get rotors for them. Just replacement parts didn't exist. And so people would just, at that point, it's like, it's a 10-year-old car, it's like it's all beat up, it's got rust and everything, and you can't get parts for the brakes, and they would junk them.
The final straw.
Yeah.
One thing, too, there's a company called Stainless Steel Brakes. What's a weird name? Well, as we know, they began re-sleeving Corvette calipers with stainless steel cylinders. And that's the whole thing. Now they make brakes for everything and this, that, and the other. But I remember back in the 70s, my buddy had a GTX with discs up front. He had about 3 presses of the pedal before the pistons would allow the fluid to bleed off. And we were thinking about sending them off, but we didn't know if the stainless steel brakes did Mopar calipers. We had no money anyway, so that car was never driven because the front brakes would just go right to the floor because the calipers were rotten and the pistons would, we've come so far. We have Willwood brakes and Bear and all this kind of stuff, and we struggled too long. But anyway, we were a kid, we had no money, so that's the other side of that coin.
Yep, mohair suits were popular either because they itched.
Huh.
But I tell you what, you check out interiors from cars, original interiors from cars from the 1930s, 1940s, and those seats are perfect. The material is perfect, the cushion is perfect. Doesn't matter what they've been through.
Yeah.
They don't make quality like that anymore. Let's see. Steve, is that a pic of you and Danny Dave I see on the wall back behind your monitor on the computer?
It is, yeah. I met him at SEMA back in 2015. Yeah, so somebody must have seen him on my YouTube channel. Yeah, Big Eddie. Yeah, from Street Outlaws. There's also a picture of Richard Rawlings above that. I met him at SEMA too. Anyway.
Danny Dave he's a trip, man. That guy, he is so freaking hardcore.
I don't know him well, but he does his thing on driving those Street Outlaws. Yeah.
Oh, I'm a fan. He's hardcore. Him and the guy Chuck, and the guy Reaper. I can't think of what his actual name. Oh, those guys are great, man. They remind me of fuel racers from back in the day. It's like just send. There's a lot of interesting characters in that.
It's funny. I don't know. It's funny. When I was at Hot Rod Mags, I left in 2005, and turbo kits and stuff were still kind of exotic, but they were coming along. And now, I've not been out of the mark, but when I was at, you get the latest news on everything, and the turbo stuff is like everywhere, and it's a whole different world. Put it like that. But anyway, I don't know what I don't know.
Thank you, Danny boy. James Gold. I couldn't think of his name. Yeah, those guys really deserve respect. Forget about all the TV stars or anything like that. No, those guys deserve respect. They are ultra hardcore. Matt saying the chrome plating in the 40s, 50s, and 60s was the best. Yeah. It was the nickel base that they put down, and a lot of that isn't even chrome. A lot of that is just nickel. It's polished nickel. But yeah, and the stainless. That was the thing. I remember when I was a kid, you'd go through the woods, right? You used to hang out in the woods, go party and shit like that, and you'd find cars that had been in there, like insurance jobs from the 1950s, and the car would be completely destroyed, nothing left in it. It had been on fire, everything's all rotted away and everything. But the trim, on the side of the car and around the windshield would always be like absolutely pristine.
Yeah, if only the car could be made like that.
I think they stopped with the nickel dipping, like I guess because you don't see that kind of quality anymore past around 1963
I know too that today chrome shops are pretty rare. When I was in California, I built a car called the Wilshire Shaker Nova,
Yeah.
and it had rear bumper chrome. They had to send it down to Mexico because I guess there's mercury involved in a chrome shop, and I guess no more chrome shops because of the chemicals. Yeah.
We have one here in Nashville, and the price of chrome is just off the chain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mexican spec. All right, man, you're going to get held to the fire here, Steve. You're going to get held to the fire. Steve, do you know the 2 mistakes you made in your rabbit video from today?
Don't know. Well, we shot that 3 days ago at Bernardson Auto Wrecking, so probably more than 2. I don't know. Tell me. I don't know. I do videos on anything and everything if it's interesting. A lot of people don't realize that the Volkswagen Golf was called the Rabbit for 10 years, 75 through about 84, 85. And what? Yeah. And even has a little running. So that was the point of that video. But there's probably some stuff in there. I don't know about. Probably had to do with probably engine specs, maybe. I don't know.
The Dodge Omni and the Plymouth Horizon were pretty much clones of the Rabbit.
They were Talbots. They were the same, but they weren't. That's another video coming up. But the Omni Horizon did get Volkswagen motors for a little while. But the Omni and Horizon, I'm going to get them and set them side by side for another video because they're similar but not the same. It was a great copy job. But French car, the Talbot, that was kind of where Chrysler borrowed that and it became ours, Anyway, but the Talbot's a little different, but it's,
Bill, thank you for the super chat. I had those brakes. He's talking about the Kelsey Hayes. I had those brakes in my 71 Dodge Swing, a 3-18 2-barrel car, automatic, 2-door with 14-inch wheels. Those were actually different than the B-body ones. And those you can get parts for. They're the same design. But they take a different pad. Different rotor and a different pad. Chris, the Omni Horizon was based on a Simca. Yeah. Mechanically, yes, but the styling was directly from the Rabbit.
Yeah, Simca, Talbot, yes. And funny thing is, too, we also found, it's funny, I used to think when I did my junkyard crawls, well, go ahead, I won't.
No, go ahead.
I used to think, well, it got to be all Hemi Cudas and Z28s and Boss 9s. I've found that if I find a white Freightliner, a Ford C600 tractor, this cab over tractor, there's something on every vehicle. There's a minivan, an all-wheel drive minivan in the boneyard, which I just who cares? But I looked underneath it. It's got a tube beam axle that's offset. There's an aluminum differential and 2 half shafts. So the rear axle moves with the beam axle on the leaf springs under the back of the minivan. Minivans are front-wheel drive, right? Well, when they did the all-wheel drive, they came up with this crazy, it made sense somehow, some way. It wasn't independent, but it was like, it was a tube and an axle. Weirdest damn thing. So we're going to lift that thing up and do a video. Everything has a story. And I find if you give it a voice, if I say to myself, I didn't know that, then it's usually a pretty interesting thing, and I don't know anything. So,
Yeah, the Omnis use VW short blocks. The 1.9. Yeah. That was like the first 2 years of production. What is it, 78 and 79?
Yeah, and there was a shortage too, apparently. Yeah. I know that Volkswagen Rabbit, they were using them all, so Chrysler had to get busy. And Bill Shope's, Willem Wortman's book, Chrysler Engines from Essen, the big silver thing, gets into that stuff. It's a great book, the history of it.
Oh, 1.7. That was what? Maybe that was a 1.7. I got my only speeding ticket in a 1.7 Omni, coasting downhill with a blown head gasket.
That's ironic, getting a speeding ticket. Now the GLHS was kind of kinky. I get that, but the front-wheel drive thing was, to me, very depressing stuff. It was the right cars at the time, the K cars and whatnot, but to me, it was like that made the difference between the 80s and the 70s and the 60s all the more. Like the Hemi Cuda and this Dodge Omni, or and the Horizon, the Reliance, and the Aries K. And the Dodge Miser pick. Remember the Miser package in '83, the Charger Miser fuel economy, and meanwhile 5.0 Mustangs, and like what happened? The front-wheel drive Mopars are interesting, but no, man, sorry, that's just me. Now, the turbo guys, I know, I get that, but there were Band-Aid mobiles. I hate to say it, I didn't say that.
I was probably 16. Right, 1978, or no, maybe I was 15, 77, 78, whatever the year was. I don't remember exactly which year it was. It doesn't matter. I went to the newsstand to get my usual fix of Hot Rod, Carcraft, Superstock, Hot, whatever magazine happened to be there. There was nothing new, and they had a new car buyer's guide. So I bought the new car buyer's guide, and they were showing the downsized GM cars that fastback deal and
Yeah.
the front-wheel drive Chrysler products, and like this was like going to be the future. And we were talking about how the V8 was no more, and everything was going to be V6,
Right.
4-cylinder. And I went into the
Yeah.
biggest. It was the closest I came to
Suicide.
suicidal depression that could ever. You know what I mean? It's like I will never forget that. It was this blackness that just took over my world.
Yeah.
And then I embraced it. I was like, oh, okay, it's cool.
So I wasn't the only one. That's why I say, when the Hemi came back, I was a spokesperson for Chrysler and stuff from time to time, and I'd say I kind of feel like you guys did this for me as penance for what you did to my brain in the 70s and the 80s, because it was dark times, like this stuff.
Oh, please.
Yeah. Now I appreciate these. They're interesting now, but they're sticker cars, man, and they weren't performance cars, but
I went to the. I remember when I went to the 1976. I guess it was 1975.
Yeah.
So I was 13, and or maybe 14, and they had the new car every year. I would take the bus over to the what the hell was the name of the Dodge place on Staten Island. I can't remember it now, but I would take the bus to go look at the new cars, and they had the new Volare Roadrunner in there, right? And it was the Dodge place, the Chrysler Plymouth place.
Yeah.
And they had the Volare Roadrunner in there, and I was kind of like iffy about it and everything else. And it had a 318. I'm like, oh well, okay, well they've had 318s, and I saw the VIN number.
Yeah, no RMs, right?
It didn't say RM, and I was like, it's not a Roadrunner. How did they put this sticker? How did they call this a Roadrunner? It's not a Roadrunner.
We had to go to the A47 on the trim tag. Yeah.
See, only Mopar guys, only young Mopar guys would be into the VIN numbers even back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even back then, it was a decade later before like the rest of the world started to catch on about it's this VIN and that. No, if you were a Mopar guy, as soon as you saw a car, anything you were interested in, you'd walk over and look at the VIN number to find out what motor was in the thing.
Yeah, the fifth spot. And one thing too is, today Subaru WRX and stuff. This is what Subaru was. No kidding. I mean, what a hideous creature. I mean, I love them. They're cool, but that was Subaru, and that's what they came here with, and they grew from strength to strength. But there was not much to get excited about in that car. I hate to say it, but people loved them, but they weren't car people. But they grew, and now the WRX is an animal. SEI animal. With that said, though, that's what we were dealing with back in the day, which is why suicide, not so much depression. I mean, my God, what is that thing? But with that said, they were popular, the right car at the time.
School teachers bought those Subarus, right? It was all school teachers, and I remember driving them. So I was a mechanic then when I was a teenager, and I remember driving them, and like they were the laziest sounding thing.
Yeah,
Subarus,
the flat floor. Yeah,
right. Volkswagens, okay, like Pancake 4s, like we're on Volkswagens and shit.
Yeah.
And they had a certain feel or a certain sound.
That weird
But the
noise.
Subaru was just like, yeah. You know what I mean? It would wheeze.
Here's a picture. This is a nice little picture right here, at least. See, that's cool.
That's a nice picture, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, they were good looking cars, and I see them coming on strong,
Yeah.
I mean, Super Coupes and stuff, and they all have their place. I mean, Trans Ams, we used to laugh at Shaker, the Disco Mobile Trans Ams. We all know that from 1975 through 1980, 79, the Shakers were all fake. They were sealed shut. They don't do anything but sell cars. That's what those did. And that's like, why would General Motors, they made a $500,000, I think, or $250,000 anyway, fake Shaker hoods. But that's what it took to sell cars in the 70s. Now, not that, that whole malaise thing, out of mayonnaise, I say to that one, but we've come a long way. And I kiss every ZL1 Camaro that I see. I don't really, but it's amazing we have this stuff now. It really is. Even if it's over, who cares? There's a lot of them out, and they'll be around. We'll still go with gasoline, but anyway.
Mopar Den, thank you for the super chat. I know I speak for many here, but I'm in awe just hanging out, listening to you and Steve talk cars. These lives are real treasures for all of us to enjoy. I feel the same way. I mean, I so look forward to having Steve on here because this is like, you're one of the few people that like you're as much of a nerd, if not more so. You're a nerd than you're the king. It's like you're the king, you're a nerd.
Well, isn't everybody like this? You know what I mean? Isn't everybody like this? It's kind of like, okay, but yeah, whatever. But yeah.
So yeah, Mopar. Thank you for the compliment. But like I said, it's like that guy right there. Man, that's it. The end of the line as far as gearhead nerds go. Steve, we're running out of time here. We're coming close. Just anybody who doesn't know your channel, right? Let's give you a rundown on it.
Yeah, Steve Mag's YouTube channel, Steve Magnante, whichever one. My last name is Magnante, Magnante, but anything close is fine. The G's like filet mignon, you know what I mean? Lasagna. Yeah, but anyway, the Steve Mag's YouTube channel. Every day I try to have a new 6 to 12 minute long walk around from the boneyard. Every week we spend a day or two banging them out. And I don't know anything about uploading and like, this, I don't know. I can talk into the little glass hole. I do that very well. But the rest of it, I'm at the mercy of Shane Richardson at High Octane Classics. He's a great dude. And so he does all the uploading. Now, I try to do these things live into the camera. Now, the thing of it is, I don't want to bore anybody with the task of editing. And they say, well, bring a second camera. No, then you have 4 times as much footage to cut and slice and screw up. So sometimes I'll misspeak because it's live. I do it like it's a live thing. So
I do the same thing. Same thing.
And I'll walk around the car and I'll write with a Sharpie how many of these were made with discs versus drums. If you look at the video, there's notes. Well, whatever, man. I don't claim to be an expert. I give the cars a voice. And, so every day a video comes out on my channel, I hope. And if not, there's not too much of a break. Like when we go to Barrett Jackson, here's a crazy thing. I'll make this quick. But ever get a copyright claim, Tony, on your videos?
No.
Okay. If Van Halen's playing in the background a little too loud, there's a thing that smells that or hears that, and it's going to get a copyright. And what'll happen is you won't get revenue from your video. Not that that's the point of this, but the Van Halen, who owns that sound, will get it. So anyway, when I did the Barrett Jackson style, I went to Barrett Jackson. So it was about a 6-day thing where there's nothing. I didn't want to go dark for 6 days. So we did a greatest hits from the Texas Junkyard. Well, this intro music, this generic noise, there was a one-time rent. And I got copyright claims on that crap. So we had to go back in and scrub it out. That's why they're counting. So it's, I get it. You got to get paid for your work, whoever you are. But
that's petty. That's petty.
Well, I get it. If I was a studio guy making, soundtrack music and it was rented once to a guy and they used it again, well, I'd want my action. Fine. But anyway, so the videos come out except for when I go to Barrett Jackson. But I try to do one every day, a new one. So anyway, but thank you. But it's stevemax.com, and that's kind of what's going on, really. And of course, you have Barrett Jackson and another June in Vegas. But, yeah.
And you get fantastic views compared to your number of subscribers. You get fantastic views on your channel.
I will say something. I love model cars. And here's my latest little project. This is a Ram Charger. I painted this my decals, and that's an A925 Doomsday Hemi right there. See how it has 16 stacks, little ones and big ones. So I'm a geeky geek. But when I put model cars on my channel, it went from 1.1 million to 400,000 views. Down. So I hate to say it, I love model cars, but I know better now.
Well, that's what I do. See, I throw different. See, I'm a geek in so many different ways. Like I bought a Honda Super Cub. You familiar with those at all?
It's a bike, right? I think.
Yeah, it's the biggest selling motor vehicle in history. They've sold over 100 million of them since 1958. It's been in continuous production in one part of the world or another since 1958. So I bought one. I have a couple of Harleys, but I wanted they re-released them here in the States. I brought them back here to the States, and I needed to have one. Just needed to have one. So I did a couple of Super Cub videos.
Okay.
Nothing. Crickets. Zero. It killed my algorithm because I did 2 in a row. It knocked me off the YouTube favorable status, right? To like where they'll put your videos out. They punished me because I did 2 videos in a row that,
I did about 3 weeks of model cars. And went backwards. It was snowing in New England, so I'd sit in my couch and go, "Hey, Steven, the model car crawl," and I'd open up Johan models and stuff. I love that stuff. It won't be gone, but it's frustrating that it didn't take off. But I get it. Junkyards it's the vicarious thrill of the treasure hunt. I just wish that Trend Motor would figure out and do another Trend Motor backwards. Is what I'm trying to say. But oh well, too bad.
Trend Motor is over. That's the past. It's done. YouTube is the future. You are the future. Yeah. And all I'm saying Steve, I think if you make a dedicated models channel, you get a whole different audience. And I totally
That's
agree
true.
with that.
Yeah, I don't have time. There's what do they call them? Scale survivors. That's a great it's a podcast. I love model cars, but again, it's not for everyone. But yeah, I just don't have time to do another one. It's one or the other, But I love junkyards. I like models, but I don't like that.
Yeah, there are guys jumping in here saying they love your model car content. So you're not alone, man. You're not alone.
Yeah, I mean, 400,000 views. It's not like 10, but at the same time, it's not like 1.7 million. On junkyard stuff, but.
So, is there anything you want to plug, man? We're coming up on the end here.
No, no. I'm glad to be here with you and in paper magazines. I mean, the only stuff that's left, all Chevy Performance in the Garage Media. I don't do it anymore, but I did a thing called Bowtie Boneyard, but they're good folks. They're good people. Magazines, they're not dead. I don't know. It sucks that so many magazines just were wiped out when. When Motor Trend and whatever it was, Velocity merged and stuff like that, and the magazines died. I'm like, what? 19 magazines out of 22 were dissolved. Carcraft went away, and it's kind of a bummer. But so nothing. I'm just saying, subscribe to a magazine if you care about them. That's all.
What would be a great topic, and this is something both of us are so intimately familiar with. I think that next time we get together, and let's say sometime around the middle of May.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Next time we get together, let's talk magazines. Let's talk the history of car magazines. Let's dig out some more. I got a stack of them upstairs.
Yeah.
Let's dig out some of our favorite stories and articles and whatnot.
Another thing too is the behind the scenes. There's a thing called a tear sheet at Hot Rod and the run sheet. I kept all that stuff, and in fact, they sell them on. I used to sell them on my Instagram for like $20 for the tear sheet. I had a ton of them. All the guys would throw me. You want them? Yeah, I'll take them. Jeff Koch, Terry McGee, they give my tear sheets. I keep them. But those are like pre-production prototypes, is what they are. But if you have anything like that from CSK, I'll trade you. That's.
I have nothing. You call them tear sheets. We used to call them blue lines.
Yeah, right. And there's only one. Would you get a bunch or just one?
What do you mean?
Would you all have to pass the one blue line around, or would you have a bunch of them? You could all get.
Well, it just depended. Sometimes we got a stack of them, and sometimes there would be one. It was just however the printer would send it back to us. I think it was a time thing. If we got it in late, we'd get one. If we got it in on time, then they would send enough for everybody to go through.
And it went into the trash. And today they're like pre-production prototype Corvettes. To me, I think they're cool. Anyway.
Yeah. I gotta call my friend Neil Van Opry. Neil.
Mr. 5.0.
Yeah. I bet you he's a pack rat kind of guy, and I bet you he's got stuff like that.
Marty Shore, one of the legends of Magnum Royal magazines.
Sure, I work for Marty.
Yeah, he's still very much alive. I interviewed him, and my podcast, by the way, the Steve Mag's YouTube, the Muscle Car Show podcast. I got to the end of 1,001 muscle car facts, whatever it was. And this one right here. So there's 69 episodes. They're out. They're free. Check them out there. I just sit and I read from this. And people, cops and truck drivers are the ones who like the thing because they drive along, listen to GTO, everything, the whole damn thing. But with that said, I might do another podcast. Don't know. There's 2 other books, the Mustang and Corvette book, which are now out of print, but whatever. But I might do more podcasts. But that was reading. But I find the videos are far more fun to do. Anyway.
All right. So then we're gonna wrap it up here. And I got to thank our mods, John, Ari, Fubar, Zero. Guys, thank you so much. They're always here, and they keep this thing running smooth, clean, the whole bit. Everybody contributed with Super Chat. Thank you so much. You pay the bills. Thank you. Everybody contributed just with your conversation, your presence, your questions, your thank you for participating. You guys are part of the best automotive community on YouTube. Period. The end. I go to these other guys. They're on the chats. I see their lives. I watch them. I look at the corners. You guys are the best. There's nothing that comes close. And thank you for being that. And Steve, thank you for being you, my brother.
Well, thank you, Tony. Likewise.
So, right. And that's it. Happy Easter. Happy Passover. And if there's anything else people are celebrating today, happy that too. I just hope everybody has a happy holiday. And that's it. I'm gonna hit this end broadcast button, and this is all gonna come to an end.
Yeah.
Good night, all.
All right.